Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching What If Kid Naruto was saved by 9 Daedric Lords. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
The 10th of October, Konoha today, October 10th, was a day of celebration, grief, and ignorance-fueled blind rage, with a full moon lighting up the dark sky. Naruto Uzumaki, who had just turned 6, was currently fleeing a crowd that was howling for blood. "Kill it! Kill the demon!" yelled a villager. Another shouted, "Stop running and face your punishment, demon brat." The young boy continued to run as usual. This was nothing new to him, but why? Why did they injure him so severely? He had no idea. He was violently thrown back as he turned a corner. Had struck a fence made of wood. He glanced over his shoulder to witness Ninjoto, a Japanese short sword, pined through into the wall and over his shoulder. The boy was unable to bring. He screamed just to see it, and then he was knocked down. A right hook snapped him out of his reverie. When he looked up, he saw a man with white hair growling at him. "Kill him, Mizuki!" exclaimed a villager. Mizuki, who was now identified, pulled the kunai off his sleeve and placed it against his stomach, gradually descending, causing the boy to scream that was audible from the other side. "The Fire Nation," and Mizuki smiled back. Mizuki stated sadistically, "You feel that, demon? Huh, well, if not, then you're definitely going to feel this." As he slid the full blade up into his chest and pressed it into him. In an instant, Naruto was flung from his world into what appeared to be a sewer. He simply floated in the water and then jumped up due to excruciating stomach pain, but more precisely, he was raised into the air from the now glowing red cell, and all 4 of his limbs were extended. He noticed a massive, deep orange fox imitating his posture when he looked up. The young boy asked, "Who are you?" out of curiosity rather than fear. "Me, boy? I'm your prisoner and you my warden. I'm the reason you are hated so, but it matters not, for I am dead," softly replied the fox. Naruto remarked, "But you're not dead." "I am, but do not fear, for you will not be alone, for the gods personally saw to that," Kyuubi replied softly. With concern, Naruto asked, "What do you mean, regarding the fox?" "Just a sly, goodbye, kit." From the fox there was a burst of white light before the blonde could speak. Naruto was slumped against a black wall when he looked up and saw a black tower with a red beam emanating from its summit. Below that, he saw the entrance to the tower and a dark metallic bridge that ended at his feet. He slowly stood up and turned to face the wall, which appeared to be composed of volcanic glass and had an odd symbol in the center, the Oblivion symbol. Naruto got up and wondered where he was when he was surrounded by 9 figures and said, "I am madness. I am the hunt. I am domination. I am lies and deceit. I am destruction. I am plots and murder. I am knower of the unknown. I am pestilence. I am shadows and thefis." Together, they uttered, "We are the Daedric princes." The elderly man with a Scottish accent said, "Ah, hello there, little mortal." Incredulous, Naruto uttered, Who are you guys?" The Scotsman shouted anime style, "Well, didn't you hear us? We are the Daedric princes, boy, the most powerfulles beings in existence." A woman in a dark cloak said, "I think he means our name, Sheogorath." "Ah, there I go skipping the formalities. I am Sheogorath, Prince of Madness," he said while bowing. The woman with the cloak said, "I am the Nocturnal Prince of Thieves." A humanoid that resembled the devil declared, "I am Molig Bol, the Lord of Domination." A slender man with a spear and a deer horn protruding from his head declared, "I am Hircine, Lord of the Hunt and father of the man best." A massive mass of tentacles declared, "I am Hermes Mora, Prince of Forbidden Knowledge." A green dragon declared, "I am Pariat, Lord of Pestilence." A woman wearing dark battle armor declared, "I am Boethia, Lord of Murder." A 6-armed woman declared, "I am Melphala, Lord of Deceit." A red man with 4 arms declared, "I am Meron's Dagon, Lord of Devastation." Nocturnal remarked, "Douse that answer your question, little one." Naruto laughed as he tried to get rid of Purit and said, "Hee, you're pretty." Sheogorath remarked, "I think he's crazier than I am." Molig Bol raised little Naruto to face level by grabbing him by the back of his shirt. "Listen to me, mortal. We have been stuck in that rodent for eras now. In each one of his tail is where we'd laid dormant, and now we are free from it and now imprisoned in you now, so we are going to help you. We are you now. Each one of us will dominate a piece of your mindscape like our own plan of oblivion, which means you will receive training from us in each of our worlds. You are your own gate to oblivion," Molig Bol stated. "So you'll be training me, make me strong, so I can be Hokage," Naruto exclaimed with a beaming smile. Molig Bull remarked, "Hokage, no, you're going to be the Daedric king boy." Molig Bull dropped Naruto, surrounded him, and covered him with their hands, claws, and tentacles. "Now be warned, boy. Once we merge into you, you'll be a new person, darker, sadistic, BUS, but you'll gain our artifacts and strength, and these pathetic villager will never hurt you again," Dagon said. At that moment, Naruto was made. "Do it. Please, I don't want to be weak anymore. I want them to suffer," the boy cried. The Daedra all said at once, "No longer, boy, no longer, you will have what you seek." Mizuki was still holding the blade when Naruto's eyes snapped open. He smirked and poked his fingers into his eye sockets, making him stagger back. Naruto leapt off the fence and observed his stomach mend itself. Mizuki grasped his former eyes and said, "Ah, you demon brat, look what you done." Naruto then leapt forward and kicked him, sending him into the nearby forest. Speaking in a Scottish accent, "Ta come visit again or I'll pluck out your eyes, ha ha ha. Now for the rest of you," he said, with a Molig Bull-like voice. Naruto's hand reached out, and then there was a swishing sound, a crunch, and a man with a demonic mace fell forward. The devil's face, which was visible from all sides, was lodged in the back of the man's head. The devil's face then broke free and entered Naruto's grasp before vanishing in a black mist. A werewolf emerged from a nearby forest, clawed down 5 of them, and dragged 2 in each hand back to the dark forest while screaming as they attempted to flee. Naruto smirked and whistled. There were now only 6 villagers left, and they were surrounded by an ally. Naruto is walking closely behind, smiling, and carrying a staff, Wabajak, in one hand, and an ebony-bladed katana in the other. Naruto aimed the staff at one of the villagers, and a dark green explosion struck it, turning it into a pile of ash. He then fired another one, turning another villager into a chicken. When Naruto arrived, he cut one of the villagers in 2, then stabbed another with the skull, causing him to fall to the ground. He then let both of them vanish from his grasp and held Marun's razor in his right hand. The final villager begged on his knees, "Wait, please, I'm sorry," while whistling, "1 is the lowest number." Naruto grinned, took hold of his head, and slowly slid the razor through his lower jaw. When he stopped twitching, the man fell to the ground, dead. A young boy's scream, followed by an older man's howling and now a sadistic laughter, filled the night air as the 3rd Hokage ran with a group of Ambu close behind. He turned a corner and saw a blood-covered Naruto grinning from ear to ear. "And Naruto?" inquired the 3rd. Naruto's "Hey Gramps" sounded like all the Daedra combined. Naruto was still covered in blood as he sat in the Hokage's office. The 3rd was amazed that a 6-year-old could have killed Mizuki and an entire group of villagers in a matter of seconds. He hoped Jiraiya would come back to look at the seal that controlled the fox. The Hokage said, "Naruto, can you tell me what happened tonight?" Naruto explains that he was stabbed by Mizuki and the Daedric princes while fleeing from the mob. "So these Daedric princes were inside the Kyuubi, and no sealed into you, who are going to train you to be like them, gain the artifacts, powers, skills, and dominate your personality and mindscape as their own realm," the elderly gentleman replied with disbelief. "Yay, that's pretty much it, Gramps," the 6-year-old remarked. The 3rd said, "I'm not sure how to interpret this, Naruto." Molig Bal stepped out of the shadows and said, "Maybe I can help out with that." The 3rd Hokage, startled by the beast's unexpected appearance, said, "And who are you?" "I am Molig Bal, one of the 9 Daedra lords sealed inside the boy, as I'm sure he told you. Allow me to explain a few things, mortal. Me and my kin were once feared and worshipped throughout a world called Nern. We even rivaled the gods at our time. We were gods in our own right, but the 9 divine and a few of my kin waged a war against us, but we were overwhelmed," Molig Bal clarified. The old man inquired, "And how did you, or the Kyuubi for that matter, end up in our world?" 3 Elder Scrolls and the blood of a divine, they used to do the deed, and we were sent to another world, another time, and were sealed in the one thing with enough reserve to hold us, what you call the Kyuubi, and the rest you know," Molig Bal continued. Naruto smiled, yawned, and fell asleep. Molig Bull picked up the sleeping boy and held him before vanishing into a black mist. "You're going to have one interesting life, Naruto," the Hokage sighed as he leaned back in his chair. Made them 15, Ninja Academia. 9 years later, Shikamaru was sleeping. Fangirls were all around Sasuke, and Iruka's classroom was in its typical state. When Naruto entered the room, all the noise ceased. His hair was now wilder, darker blonde with deep red highlights, and he was dressed in a fishnet shirt, baggy black jeans, combat boots, a half-zipped-up crimson-red jacket with a metal plate in the shape of skulls running down both sleeve arms, and a small tattoo on the side of his neck. The Oblivion symbol. He approached and took a seat between his two closest friends, Shikamaru and Choji. Naruto sat down and said, "Hey guys." Choji shook Shikamaru awake and said, "Hey Naruto." Naruto inquired, "So the test is today, right?" Shikamaru remarked, "Yeah, one problematic thing after another." Iruka addressed the class, saying, "All right, today we'll see if you're prepared to take your first step in the shinobi world. The first will be chakra release, second clone jutsu, then a taijutsu match between two students. No ninjusts or genjutsu. Naruto, will you come down please?" Iruka explained. Iruka stated, "Okay, first chakra release." With a sly smile, Naruto unleashed a massive chakra wave that caused some students to faint and pinned Iruka to the ground. Iruka got up from the floor and said, "Oh okay, no wa clone jutsu." Naruto asked if he could perform a summon instead. Iruka asked, "Why, you have a contract?" "I do," Naruto smirked, making Uchiha envious. "Well, that's above a clone technique. I don't see why not. Is it snake, toad or slug?" Iruka said. "Hee no, Daedra," the blonde said with a menacing smile. A 6'5" inches tall man wearing demonic armor, Daedric armor from Oblivion, emerged from a dark swirling portal that appeared after Naruto took a few steps back, cut the palm of his hand, and made a swirling motion before slamming his bleeding hand into the ground without shouting, summoning jutsu. Then he withdrew his demonic battle axe from behind him. The Dremora uttered, "My lord, why do you summon me?" With a commanding tone, Naruto said, "Only for a test, Markanaz. You may go." Before leaving, he growled at the students, making them jump in terror, and vanished through a dark portal. "Naruto, that was by far the most impressive summon I've seen in my life. I mean that now for the taijutsu match," Iruka replied with reverence. "Sasuke, come down." As his fangirls encouraged him, Sasuke smirked and remarked, "That Dobi can't win agents Uchiha elite like me. This is going to be easy." "Crush him," Molig Bal uttered in Naruto's head. Naruto uttered, "Haha, I intended to." With a smug grin that never left his face, Sasuke said, "Who are you talking to, loser? Let's get this started." Sasuke snarled and drew two kunai from his pouch before charging at him and slashing recklessly until he was 5 feet away from Naruto, who had summoned Goldbrand in his right hand and the mace of Molig Bull in his left. When he finally got to him, Naruto ducked and rolled behind Sasuke, bringing the mace down on his right shoulder. He fell on his stomach, swiftly rolled around, and was stopped in his tracks when Goldbrand shoved him a half-inch from his face. Naruto asked in a Molig Bal voice, "Do you give up elite?" "Yes," gulped Sasuke. Sakura and the other members of his fan club shouted, "Sasuke-kun." Sakura shouted in his ear, "You baka, how dare you hurt Sasuke-kun." Naruto exclaimed, "Ah, volume woman, I am right here." In Naruto's head, Molig said, "I know a way to shut your mouth." "That's enough, Naruto, you pass." "Sasuke, let's see your chakra and clone jutsu," Iruka responded. "The test is taken by everyone else. Right, everybody who passed report here tomorrow morning to get an assigned team and captain." "Dismissed," Iruka said. Outside, when Naruto felt a chakra present, he was unwinding on a tree outside the academy. When he looked up, he saw Sasuke staring at him. "What do you want?" said Naruto. Irritated, Sasuke smirked haughtily and said, "That summon and weapons of yours, give them to me." Naruto smiled malevolently and said, "Oh, is that it? All right." He summoned a Dremora wearing the full set of Daedric armor by biting into the palm of his hand and slamming it into the ground. The Dremora asked, "What is your command, my lord?" "Well, Sasuke demands that I hand you over to him, so go to him and hand him something," Naruto said. "As you command," the Dremora said, before approaching Sasuke. "I am your master. You're not even worthy of saying the name Daedra, you insolent little wretch." Lifting Sasuke by the throat and choking him, the Dremora said. Naruto grinned at the scene and said, "I think he gets the message, let him go." Following the order, the Dremora dropped Sasuke, kicked him in the side, and vanished through a portal. "Why, you a loser, Ayori going to?" He discovered Naruto had vanished when he looked up. Apocrypha, Naruto's mindscape in the midst of an enormous, endless library, where ghosts occasionally wander by. Naruto sat at a small table with a lit candle on top. He was studying the Ogma Infinium. Naruto thought, I wonder how you opened this," and then a black hole appeared over his head. "Ah, I see you found my book. It makes me proud to see young people still seeking knowledge, especially forbidden knowledge. I'm not sure how to open it," Hermaeus Mora remarked. Naruto replied, "Yeah, it just won't open." "Well, I can definitely help. Put your hand on the book, channel a little chakra, and then pop, it will be open however, it will use up your chakra reserva for a mere 24 hours. Of course you will be alright after that, but I doubt it will bother you much because you have 9 Daedric lords in your body. The book will go back to my small library here after you've finished using it, Mora clarified. When Naruto put his hand on the flesh cover and channeled chakra inside, the book instantly flew open and flew through the pages until it landed on a person with 3 senses. Okay, let's try it, he said. The samurai, warrior, path, the ninjas, shadow, path. The wisdom path, spirit. Naruto puts his finger on it and says, let's try samurai. Blood began to flow from his finger into the letters, fading the words and replacing them with. The samurai follow a warrior's path, combining intelligence and ferocity. They defeat their enemies through open combat, skill, and molded strength. They wear heavy armor and wield 1- or 2-handed weapons, and they are taught to ignore pain and never give up in battle. Prowess is more important than anything else. One-handed, novice at the moment, journeyman at the next. Two-handed, novice at the moment, journeyman at the next rank. Heavy armor. Novice at the moment, journeyman at the next rank. Bloodlines are unique gifts that the gods bestow on chosen warriors. For a brief moment, reflex causes the samurai to act 10 times more quickly than usual. With searing blades, you can call forth hundreds of thousands of sharpened blades to fight alongside you for a brief moment. In ancestors' honor, a long-dead samurai's spirit is called upon to battle you until he is vanquished. Young one, keep in mind that all knowledge is pain, all pain is knowledge, and all knowledge is everything. Naruto said, let's see one-handed in ancestors' honor. Yay, that will work. A moment later, he felt transformed, both stronger and exhausted. I see you've found what you seek. Now the book is a part of you. As you become stronger, so will the skills in the book. As you change, so too will the book, Mora said. Naruto said, thank you, I need to go, as his thoughts faded. Slumping into the bed, Naruto instantly fell asleep after metallizing back into existence inside his apartment. Academic classroom. It has been my honor to have been your teacher, and it prides me to see all of you become ninja. Now Team 1A. Teams 1A 6 inches. Team 7 will be Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, and Sakura Horino, and you sensei will be Kakashi Hitaki. No, why am I on the same team with Naruto Baka? It's not fair, said Sakura. The words, don't get in my way loser, were spoken by Sasuke. Whatever, Naruto uttered while reclined in his chair, feeling as though he was suffering from a severe hangover from using the book. 4 hours later. Hey, where is he? To Naruto's dismay, Sakura yelled. When Naruto said, woman, I swear, if you don't shut up, I'll make good use of that loud mouth of yours, Molig Bao's chest grew proud. What is meant by that? Sakura uttered. You want me to spell it for you? Okay, Naruto said, growing irate. Fu ka. Poof, interrupted him. Hi. A ninja in a mask said as he appeared for the group. With another poof, he said, meet me on top of the roof. Sakura was about to leave after Sasuke had already left when she felt something grab her ass and let out a yelp. Naruto, sounding like Molig Bao, whispered in her ear, we'll finish this later, and then departed, leaving Sakura bleeding from the nose. The roof. Hello. I'm Kakashi Hitaki. Tell me about your interests, dislikes, pastimes, and future plans. You duck-ass head, he said, grinning. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, and I have a lot of dislikes in addition to my future aspirations. Reviving my clan and killing a specific person is not my ambition, Sasuke remarked. Okay. Picky, you're up. My name is Sakura Horino. My like her She looked at Naruto, then Sasuke, very confused. My dislikes are area. Well, my goal is to surpass the Slug Sannin in both strength and medicine, Sakura said hurriedly while suffering from a. Kakashi remarked, well, that's an impressive goal. Naruto leaned back idly and remarked, I'm amazed she didn't say anything about duck-ass over there. Alright, it's your turn, Kakashi said. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I like the Daedra, training, growing stronger, and killing when it suits me. I dislike, well, I have a lot of them, Naruto smirked. After saying, okay, meet me at Training Ground 44 tomorrow, and come on a light stomach, Kakashi passed out. Ground of Training 44 7 AM. After explaining, Kakashi said, okay gang, here's how it goes. You try to get the bell off of me. There are 2, which means one of you will be shipped back to the academy. Also, if you want to get the bells, come at me with the intent to kill. Sasuke and Sakura then leapt out of sight, leaving Naruto grinning. Killer intent, Sensei, You've brightened my day, Naruto remarked, calling forth Goldbrand with his right hand. That's interesting, but what makes you think you could kill me? This, Naruto, who sounded like Dagon, whispered in Kakashi's ear before slamming his leg into his back, sending him hurtling through the air. He then began to fall freely to the ground, where Naruto was waiting with the Molig Boal mace in hand at the perfect moment. He slammed the weapon into his back, sending him hurtling into the tree line. Yo, Sasuke, Sakura, leave now, or I'll send in a clan fighter after you. Not a second after Naruto's shout, Sakura and Sasuke were standing next to him. What Dobi? Asked Sasuke. You understand that this assignment requires teamwork, Naruto stated. Sakura uttered, okay, so what do we do? Choosing this moment to test his bloodline, Naruto closed his eyes and said, Ancestors' honor, in a quiet voice. A figure in white samurai armor materialized in front of the group, wearing a face mask that clung to his head and was white with 3 red stripes that extended from the forehead to the chin. What do you hope for me? Asked the white samurai. Naruto grinned and said, go play with Kakashi. When the samurai jumped into the tree line, fighting erupted, and Kakashi emerged from the forest, landing in front of the group and skipping on the ground like a stone on water. A white sword was pressed into the back of his neck as he rose to one knee. The samurai said, do you yield? Well, these 3 passed if that's what you mean. Thank you. I'll refer to you as Ghost. Go ahead, Naruto said. Ghost bowed, sheathed his sword, and vanished. The smirking Naruto asked, so sensei, do we pass? After saying, UGHH yes, meet me here tomorrow morning, Kakashi went, poof. Naruto remarked, ha, shadow clone. When Sakura saw that both of her teammates had left, she began, well, I'll see. Sakura leapt through the trees and declared, I see the target, closing in. Sasuke uttered, copy, moving to your position. Kakashi hurriedly said, hey, you guys take care of that. I'm helping an old lady cross the street. You can probably guess what he's actually doing. Sakura jumped to the ground and exclaimed, I see the target, Tharia. Oh, she saw Naruto grinning, with Tora the cat dangling from the mouth of one of Naruto's Dremora, the clan fear. Sakura shouted, Naruto, don't kill it. Naruto asked menacingly, what did I say about that mouth of yours? Sakura blushed furiously and stammered, in a way that would make Hinta proud. To the clanfear's chagrin, Naruto yanked Tora out of its mouth and said, hee, that's a good girl. Naruto patted the beast on the head and said, I know you want to eat it, and if it escapes again I'll let you. Naruto jumped into the trees and said, okay, now to deliver this cat for the 4th time. The office of Hokage, an older woman said, oh my baby, thank Kami you returned. Naruto leaned against the wall and said, Kami didn't do shit, and the next time that cat runs, I am going feed it to my Dremora. Got me? The woman hurried out of there after paying for the mission. Sarutobi remarked, nice job, now I have 3 more D ranks. To hell with that, give us something worth our time, exclaimed Naruto. Well, I do have a C rank. You have to escort a bridge builder back to his home in the Land of Waves, the 3rd replied. Tazun, please come in, the Hokage said through the door, followed by an elderly man with a bottle of liquor. The elderly intoxicated man began, so a bunch of brats are going to protect me, just go ahead and cut my head off. The ebony blade was then applied to the back of his neck with just enough pressure to cause a minor scrape. Naruto said, it would be my pleasure to do that for you, in a Melfala voice. He took a swig of his alcohol and said, you think that scares me, boy? But you seem capable enough, let's go. The village gate. Kakashi grinned and said, okay team, this is an escort mission, protect the client, keep up, and stay frosty. Naruto bit into his palm and slammed it to the ground, saying, wait a sec. A werewolf, Skyrim, emerged from a dark portal. Scout out the next 40 miles, you find anything wait for us on the main road, understand? Said Naruto with a nod. The beast flew into the trees. Kakashi asked, feeling as though his dogs had just been outshined, Naruto, what was that? Naruto told the group, a lycanthrope is one of several breeds, but I find the wolf to be the fastest and best for scouting. Nothing unusual had happened in the few hours they had been walking, but then Naruto's ears perked up and a sinister grin appeared on his face. Sasuke attempted to sound authoritative by asking, what is it, loser? After saying, looks like my dog found something, they headed up the street. Sakura yelled, Naruto wait, and the group chased after him. When they finally caught up to him, they discovered Naruto carrying a legless body and his werewolf munching on a ninja's corpse. The road was covered in blood, with some spots being thicker than others. Surprisingly, the man was still alive when Naruto approached them and threw his body to the ground. Astonished, Kakashi uttered, "Nah Naruto, these guys are the demon brothers of the hidden mist." "Yay, and it seems that this mission is more than meets the eye," said Naruto. "Ka killa emmi," the demon brother said, encompassing Naruto. He switched to a Molig Bal tone and said, "Nah, I'm going to have some fun." When Naruto snapped his finger, a crow landed on his shoulder, followed by a swarm of black birds, and the ninja was devoured by a spiked cage. "Ha ha ha, dig in!" Naruto exclaimed joyfully, and the birds immediately dove into the cage and started tearing pieces of flesh from him, causing him to scream in pain multiple times. After 10 minutes the ninja begged, "Ah, stop, for the love of Kami, stop." Naruto snapped his finger once more, telling the flock to move to the nearby branches in anticipation of desert. You're no fun at all, but fine," he said. Naruto raised his hand in the air and asked, "Now, who hired you and why?" "G Gaudo of the Waves, Ta to kill the old mana before the bridge is complete." He also Harada Ta the demon of the Mista Za Zabuza Ma Momochia. The ninja was barely able to speak. Naruto snapped his finger, "Well, thanks for the info," and the cage gradually moved away with a sigh of relief. The ninja was soon overrun by ravenous crows. Kakashi remarked, "And Naruto, at least give him a clean death." Naruto remarked, "Nope, my birds are hungry and I would be a very bad master to deny them fresh meat. Shall we move on?" His werewolf then joined him, and they strolled on as if nothing had happened. Sakura said, "I am going to throw up," as she prepared to let her inner demon loose. Sasuke, envious of Naruto's strength, remarked, "Stupid girl, we are supposed to kill." Sasuke thought, "It's not far, why is that loser having that power when it belongs to me? I'll have it, I'll take it." "You're probably too weak to kill anyone, Sasuke," said Sakura. "What? How dare you talk to an elite like me in such a way?" Sasuke was about to backhand her when something grabbed his arm and lifted him into the air. It was Naruto's hound, ready to eat him alive. Sasuke was so terrified by the thing that grabbed him and slammed him to the ground while still exposing his teeth that he did not breathe. Naruto remarked in surprise, My Sakura, seems my wolf's warmed up to you." After releasing Sasuke, the wolf approached Sakura and sniffed the air surrounding her. With a savage yet gentle tone, the wolf said, "Well, you have a lot of strength and potential, girl, but your mind is clouded. You have what it takes to be an alpha. Just keep your eyes on the prey, not the horizon." The wolf then got down on all fours and walked next to Sakura. "Well, I didn't see that coming. You may stay with Sakura as long as you wish. Hell, teach her some things while you're at it," Naruto replied. Sakura asked the wolf, which nodded its head, "Why, you think so, and you want to stay with me?" Sakura questioned, "But how will you teach me?" "Well, the thing about lycanthropes is they were once human but were infected with lycanthrope, which causes them to take their true form when they wish or under the full moon. So when he deems you worthy he can bid you, and you will become a lycan," Naruto replied. Sakura inquired, "And you would not mind if he stays with me?" Naruto grinned and said, "No, there are other people I can call upon, so go ahead." Tuzan said, "Can we get underway please?" Sasuke thought, "I will kill you mutt," but he dared not say it aloud. The demon brother was still screaming after 5 miles of walking. "The bridge is 3 miles away." Tuzan exhaled a sigh of relief, "Ah, we're almost there now." Kakashi yelled, "Duck," and everyone complied, with the exception of one blonde. A man was raped and covered in bandages from the neck to the mouth when a massive sword crashed through the group and lodged itself in the tree. Kakashi Hataka, the copycat ninja himself. "This is going to be one hell of a fight," Zabuza stated. Naruto leaned on him and said, "You've got that right." Zabuza uttered the words, "What the hell?" prior to being kicked into a lake after yanking the blade from the tree. Naruto threw it at Zabuza, who coughed just in time. Zabuza then yelled, "Water Dragon Jutsu," and waved hand signals as the name suggests. A massive water dragon came charging after Naruto, who met it head on before going poof. "Where is he?" Zabuza asked, then saw Kakashi, with his Sharingan in full swing. Sprinting toward him with a lightning blade, he was able to dodge it before it connected and imprisoned him in a slowly filling water bubble. The demon of the mist said, "Okay kid, come out, give me the bridge builder and I'll let you and your sensei go." But he failed to notice the enormous werewolf that was, ironically, directly behind him and had vanished from view. Kakashi was set free when Zabuza slowly turned his head and received a deep slash across his back that sent him to the shore. When he looked up, Zabuza saw that it was Ghost. He slashed at him with the executor's blade. which collided with his ghosts. The two persisted in pushing agents against one another until Zabuza fell to the ground after 3 needles pierced his neck. A hunter nin appeared, seized his body, and walked away silently. After Naruto reappeared behind them, Kakashi also joined them. Kakashi smiled and asked, "Naruto, did you mind telling me where you went while I was getting my ass handed to me?" "The loser probably got scared," smirked Sasuke. "You're the one who was hiding in the bushes, and where I was, you saw that hunter nin, right? Well, that was Haku, Zabuza's adoptive daughter, Fem Haku. I told her to turn on Goto, come to Konoha and be Leaf Nin, since Goto will probably kill them when he's done, and she agreed to tell Zabuza," Naruto clarified. Kakashi remarked, "That was a good idea, Naruto." When Tuzan said, "Okay, let's go where we're almost there," Naruto said, "Ghost, you may go." The group then entered the land of waves as the spirit vanished. The home of Tuzan's daughter said, "Thank you for keeping my father safe." Kakashi said, "You're welcome," while they all ate at the table. "So you're going to kill Goto?" "Many have tried, including Urien's stepfather, but they killed him publicly, but that only made my son determined to see that evil man out of the country. He makes me so proud." In contrast to how the show portrays him, which is bitchy and all. Kakashi went upstairs to sleep, saying, "But we have time to train because it will be a week before Zabuza's wounds heal, but I think we should get some rest." When Naruto saw the insane god in front of him, he was outside gazing up at the sky. Shiagorath said, "Lad, there's something you need to know." Naruto uttered the words, "And what's that?" gravely. "There's a 10th Daedra presence coming. I don't know when, but he's coming," Shiagorath replied. Naruto asked, "Are you saying I'll have to fight him?" "That's precisely what I'm saying, and we don't know which one it is, and there's an ability you'll need to learn. The princes wear a set of more sophisticated Daedric armor, which is stronger and lighter than the one you're wearing. All you have to do is bite your finger, touch your tattoo, and bam, instant armor." After touching his tattoo and biting his finger, a mist clung to him before releasing itself, revealing a different design of Daedric armor. The Skyrim set. His helmet was a face mask similar to Kakashi's, but made of metal and had a different Daedric design. Naruto remarked, appreciating his armor, "Nice." The mad god vanished from Naruto's mind as soon as he said, "You're sure do give those lasses a run for their money. Take care, lad." After touching his tattoo once more and putting the armor inside, Naruto went inside to sleep. A mile from Tuzan's house the following day, Kakashi put a foot on the tree and began climbing it, saying, "Okay, we are going to learn how to climb trees without using our hands." "Is that it?" Naruto asked, leaving a very envious Uchiha to brood after he and Sakura had already reached the summit of their trees. Naruto jumped down and said, "Now I have to teach something very important to Sakura." Sakura asked, "What's that?" as the werewolf strolled next to her. "Well, since the wolf's going to help you reach your goal of surpassing Tsunade, place each of your palm on each other's shoulders and you will be bonded and you will see the Lycan's human form." Sakura followed his instructions and felt a rush of energy that caused her to close her eyes. When she opened them, she saw not a werewolf but a woman dressed in fur, metal armor, with a bow on her back, 2 steel daggers at her side, brown hair that reached past her shoulders, and 3 gray war paint strips running horizontally across her face. "What's your name?" Sakura uttered. "Ayla the Huntress," grinned the woman. Naruto remarked, "You two have fun," as he left. 6 days later, the bridge. Naruto remarked, "I see you agreed to the plan, Zabuza." Zabuza remarked, "I did. It's a good life, one Haku deserves." With 200 mercenary soldiers surrounding him, Gato remarked, well, look at this boy. The demon chickened out no matter what. I was going to kill them anyway. Kill them but not the women. I have plans for them, before they all charge." "You want to touche my daughter," Zabuza said, drawing out the executioner's blade. Ghost followed suit. Naruto grasped the ebony and goldbrand blades. Ayla was in her wolf form. Sakura was brandishing a chakra bow and arrows, which Ayla had given her. Kakashi charged up his lighting blade. Haku called forth a hail of ice needles, and Sasuke with a kunai while hiding behind the crane. The group charge, meeting the small army in the center. Naruto was slashing right and left, hitting flesh with every movement, jumping in mid-air and spinning back to the ground, cutting heads, people and spirits in half. Zabuza was slashing in momentum, using the weight of his blade to his advantage and stabbing with a kunai in his mouth and hand. Wink. Aaliyah was taking 5 people with each swipe of her hand, picking on up by the head and using him like a club before ripping his head off with her teeth. Sakura focused her chakra in each shot with precision that ripped through 3 bandits, making a shish kebab, and pinning others to the floor with volley of arrows. Ghost was running through the crowd back and forth, always cutting down a hedge of mercenaries, just like mowing grass. Kakashi impaled one with his lighting blade and out his back shot multiple currents of electricity, and more current filled the area with each hit. Like the chain lighting spell. Mercenaries were being impaled with overgrown shards of ice that came from the sky, or more precisely Haku. Gauto wanted to flee but was paralyzed by fear when the last mercenary was killed, but Naruto approached him and Rost Goldbrand. Naruto looked to the side of the bridge and saw Iran holding a crossbow. "That's for my father, you trash," Iran said. "Wait, I can make you was all Gota said before a crossbow bolt nailed him in the side of the head, causing him to stumble back and fall into the water. Zabuza began. "Well we d," as a massive hammer struck his back and knocked him to the ground, causing a small creator behind his body stood a 9-5 feet man dressed in Skyrim-style Daedric armor. But his face was dark green with 4 small horns protruding from his head, and his teeth resembled tusks that extended from his lower gums to his upper lip. He also had a 10-year-old sized dark green hammer. In Naruto's mind, the Daedra said, "Malakath." In Naruto's mead, the Daedra all said, "Malakt," at once. Molig Bal remarked, "Do not hold back in this fight." Haku shouted, "Father," before starting to throw ice shards at the Daedra Lord, which were destroyed instantly. "You think you'll get hurt by that, girl?" Malakath laughed. Malakath charged at Naruto, reading Volendrung to smash the young boy, saying, "Ah, you must the brat containing my siblings, now feel the wrath of a true Daedra Lord." Shiagorath yelled, "Lad, your armor, use it," from his mindscape. "Perish." As he struck Naruto with the hammer, the Daedra Lord yelled. There was a flash of red, and Naruto was in his Daedric armor. And using his left hand to block Volendrung while using his right to hold the ebony blade and slash, causing the Daedra Lord to stagger back. Malakath screamed, "Mealfala, you bitch, orcs to me." Then a portal opened, revealing smaller Malakaths dressed in green armor, orcish armor. Charging at Naruto, he was able to cut down 3 of them, but he was beginning to feel overwhelmed. To his right, he saw Ayla and Kakashi assisting Sakura in killing the orcs. Malakath chose to play with his adversary a bit more before turning to face Haku, who was sobbing on her knees. The Daedra remarked, "Pathetic weakling, and you call yourself a warrior. You call me pathetic while attacking my father with his back to you." Haku struck Malakath with more ice needles, which bounced off of him. The Daedric prince said, "Huh, I'll give a quick death," raising his hammer above his head and slamming it to the ground. When Haku's death did not materialize, she closed her eyes and looked up to see Zabuza's bloody back, his feet firmly planted on the ground and the executioner's blade blocking the blow. Malakath remarked with a hint of admiration, "Well, you're not dead." "Goo, I can't hold him for long, Haku, run." Haku followed instructions and rushed to Aaliyah and Sakura after Zabuza yelled and coughed up a pint of blood. Zabuza Monoichi Zabuza shouted, "Demon of the Hidden Mist," as he held Malakath, but his defense failed, and he was kicked to the ground and struck hard by Volendrung, who then collapsed in his chest before the demon died. He gave one final smile. Zabuza. After yelling, Naruto slammed his hands into the bridge and severed the heads of the orcs he was fighting. Naruto remarked, "This is going to take a lot of chakra." Then, a large oblivion gate slowly rose behind him, revealing his own army, which included Winged Twilight, Daedrops, Exavilon, Winged Twilight, Dark Seducers, Golden Saints, and the elite Valken. With his great sword drawn, the Valken said, "What are your orders, my lord?" The Saints, Seducers, Daedrops, and Valken led the vanguard, while the Winged Twilight attacked from the air and the Clanfear and Exavilon attacked from the flank. Naruto, feeling dizzy from the lack of energy, commanded his small army to kill the orcs and protect my friends. The Crane's backed up agents, Sakura, Kakashi, Haku, and Ayla, were beginning to tire as a few orcs broke away from the main horde and pursued them. Naruto leapt over the fighting forces, brought the ebony blade overhead, and slashed down at Malakath, but Volendrung blocked it. He then leapt off and landed behind Malakath, looking to his right to see Zabuza's corpus and the Executor's blade next to it. Naruto turned just in time to block the Daedra Lord's attack, which resulted in a stalemate where both agents were pushing each other before Ghost landed. The Daedric Lord grabbed his head and repeatedly slammed him into the floor before flinging his fading body over the bridge. Malakath ripped the ghost blade from his neck and uttered, "Boy, it will take more than that." "Ha ha ha, I know that was a distraction. Now you feel the wrath of 9 pissed off Daedra Lord in one," Naruto said as he threw the Executor's blade. He then reappeared beneath Malakath, grabbed the blade before it made contact, and thrust it into his stomach, rolling under Malakath's legs. He slashed both of his main leg arteries before thrusting the ebony blade into his back with no time to rest. Naruto leapt in front of him and grabbed the handle of Volendrung, starting a tug-of-war. "I'll use your skin to blanket my bed," Malakath yelled to ignore the searing pain coursing through his body. Naruto grinned and kicked the executioner's blade handle deeper into his body, giving him the advantage to yank Volendrung out of his grasp and smash it into his chest, causing his breastplate to cave in and knock him on his back. Naruto then leapt back with his new weapon and commanded the ebony blade to come to him. The blade tore out of Malakath's upper armor, revealing a ripped and bloody build. Breathing heavily, Malakath said, "What are you surprised that I've got more than one artifact? This is Scourge." He charged at Naruto, who met it head-on after exchanging several blows. Malakath slammed the mace into Naruto's chest, causing him to fly back into one of the bridge pillars and fall to the ground with a thud. He looked up to see Malakath before he uppercutted him with Scourge, and before he left the ground, Malakath grabbed his leg and smashed him to the ground with Scourge. With his black eyes glowing and his red pupil shaped like the Oblivion sign, Naruto stood up. "Why don't you die?" Malakath yelled as he charged at Naruto, who summoned Goldbrand, the ebony blade, and the mace of Mulga Bull that were flouting around him. Naruto pointed at the Daedra Lord, and the weapons charged, beating, stabbing, and butchering Malakath until he called them off. He threw Volendrung at him and nailed him in the side of the skull, leaving a large dent that caused him to fall on all fours. He looked up to his right and saw Naruto with Scourge in both hands, ready to crush his head. Malakath said, "It lest I died a warrior." He ha 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 ha. Naruto raised the mace back and swung, connecting to his bottom jaw, causing his head to snap all the way around to the other side, killing the Daedric Prince of Curses. His body began to shake until it was slowly lifted into the air, and then a red beam shot into the sky until his collapse fell lifeless onto the floor. The orcs all stopped fighting and faded away with tears in their eyes. Haku was crying over the death of her father, and Molig Bal formed into existence beside the group. Scourge and Volendrung turned into mist and absorbed themselves into Naruto. He jolted out of his reverie and ran to Zabuza's body where everyone else was. "You made us all proud," Naruto. Molig Bal said, "and this mortal showed much courage going agents Malakath like that to protect her. For that I will bring him back." He tore off the bandages covering his face, cut his wrist, and allowed blood to fall into his open mouth. A short while later, his eyes snapped open, screaming and clutching his chest. Haku hugged Zabuza and said, "Father, ha Haku, I was dead. What happened?" "I am aware of it," Zabuza said. "Let me explain. You are a pure-blooded vampire. You will not turn to ash in the sun, but you will become weaker. I am the creator of vampires back in Nirn. A drop from my veins. You'll occasionally need to feed on blood because you're stronger and faster now, and I've given you the ability to draw out chakra in addition to blood," Molig Bal remarked as he faded back into obscurity. "Naruto, are you okay?" Sakura asked with genuine concern. "Yeah, but I'm going to be sore in the morning. Oh, and before I forget," Naruto said, waving his hand as the Oblivion Gate retreated into the earth once all of the Daedra had entered it. When Naruto raised him into the air with one hand, Sasuke's smirk vanished. "Hey, they're just lucky they did not go up agents and Uchiha elite like me. The name of a dead clan means nothing, and you will never kill your brother. You are pathetic. You hid while we fought and fought, you were stuck, you were nothing, and you will always be nothing. Sasuke." Before hurling a wide-eyed Sasuke to the ground, Naruto yelled, "You want to be shocked and not act like it, then do something about it. I'll force the council to give me those weapons and jutsu because they belong to me. How dare you?" Sasuke retaliated, but Sakura's kick knocked him unconscious. Sakura bowed and remarked, "It's time that little bitch stopped complaining." Naruto stared at her ass and said, "Damn, that was hot. That time with Ayla did you some good." She then waved it sensually. "Ada boy," Molig Bal uttered in Naruto's head the following day. Ian, with the village behind him, said, "Thank you Naruto for getting Gato out of our country." When Naruto grinned and said, "You're the one who killed him, remember?" the villager lifted her on into the air and began to criticize him. Tuzan grinned and said, "Yes, thank you, Naruto. I think we'll call it the Great Naruto Bridge." Naruto said, "I like it," and he and his team left. 2 days later, the Hokage office. According to the report, after 200 bandits were killed by Naruto, Sakura, Yu, 2 missing nin, and a werewolf named Ayla. Naruto killed a Daedri prince, the Hokage, to double-check them. Yay Gramps. Apparently there were 16 Daedra in total in Nirn, but the one sealed into me lost and the other 7 betrayed them and joined the 9 divine, Naruto replied as he filled in some minor gaps. "And now, the vampire demon of the hidden mist and his adopted daughter are integrating into the village? Dumbfounded?" asked Saratobi. Yeah, that's basically it, Naruto remarked in a straightforward manner. I'm not sure if I should be scared or excited, the Hokage remarked, sagging back in his seat. Sarutobi grinned and said, Oh, and Naruto, I'm proud of you. And Sasuke went to the civilian council demanding your weapons, summons, and techniques. They said yes, so you may want to walk your back, but the Shinobi Council said if they try anything you have the right of self-defense. As Naruto walked away, an insane smile appeared on his face. While lounging in his chair, the Hokage thought, oh, those poor bastards. Later, that is Naruto's apartment at night. After taking a shower, Naruto heard a knock on the door. He hurried to get a pair of black shorts and went to answer, only to be surprised to see Sakura there. Sakura said, hey, while blushing as he looked at his upper body. The teasing statement, my eyes are up here you know. May I enter? Sakura inquired. He said, sure, and opened the door. I wanted to thank you for changing me, with Ayla. Sasuke, you made me a different person, a better person, and I'm very, very grateful. The mindscape of Naruto. Shiogarath yelled, ha, I told you he'd nail it. To the other Daedra princes Vermeera and Nocturnal had severe nose bleeding. Molig, where's my money? Shiogarath yelled at the Lord of Domination. I'm fine here. Molig Bal snarled while hurling a piece of cheese at Shiogarath. When Naruto sensed something tugging in the mindscape, he simply fell asleep. He awoke at the foot of stairs that led to a huge black door with a statue of a crow on top of it. Naruto ascended the stairs and reached the door, slowly pushing it open to reveal a master bedroom with a huge bed that occupied half the room, a woman with dark ivory eyes and long, slick black hair that reached her shoulders, and a silky robe that was draped loosely around her body, exposing her thighs. Hello Nocturnal, to what do I owe the pleasure? Naruto grinned. It's really that easy. Pleasure, as she carefully removed the robe and scurried on all fours to the edge of the enormous bed and pulled Naruto into the silk sheets. Nocturnal remarked, it's not easy to make a Daedra prince jealous, let alone lustful. He smirked, tired of their little game, and inserted himself inside of Nocturnal, who arched her back from the pleasure coursing through her body as she rode him fiercely. Naruto swiftly took off his clothes, tackled Nocturnal's lips with his own, and slipped 2 fingers inside of her, getting a loud moan mixed with a laugh. As a reward, she flipped where she was on top and started grinding her hips into his, causing him to groan, and he shot up and nibbled on his neck before biting down on her neck, causing her to dig her fingernails into his back, drawing blood. Crash! A huge tick mark began to form on Naruto's head as he leapt out of bed, grabbed a pair of shorts, and went to his door, only to be met with another rock. As soon as he opened it, Naruto looked around and saw a broken window with a rock in the floor surrounded by shards of glass, much to Sakura's discomfort as he used his chest as a pillow. Naruto Uzumaki, in the name of the Civilian Council, give all of your weapons, jutsu and power to Sasuke Uchiha, a council member stated. With a smug grin, Sasuke remarked, yay loser, those abilities rightfully belong to me. Naruto's tick mark widened. Do you realize what a wonderful dream I was having? I'm furious now. Naruto yelled at them, called forth the Wabajack in his hand, and blasted one of the council members with a burst of dark green energy. Looking down at his hand, the council member said, is that a demon? Haha, oh my. He began to lick his lips and began eating his finger ferociously until only a nub remained before realizing what he had done. Look what you did to me, you brat. Everyone turned to watch Naruto, who was laughing uncontrollably, as the man screamed and then passed out from the agony. Now, in the name of the Shinobi Council, all of my jutsu are bloodlines and my artifacts are family heirlooms, and just because that spoiled brat wants something you expect me to give it to him, said Naruto with seriousness. With a haughty grin, Sasuke said, you need to learn your place in the world, beneath people like me. He then leapt to the apartment balcony and tried to grab the Wabajack, but Naruto sidestepped him and slammed the staff into his back, sending him to the ground below. With a dark smile that exposed his canines, Naruto said, I want all of you to hear this. I could kill you all anytime I wanted, just like I did 9 years ago. He then blasted another shot from the staff, turning another council member into a fish that flopped helplessly on the ground before turning to face Sasuke. If this will get you off my back here, Naruto summoned a deep red staff and tossed it to Sasuke. What is this? As he examined the weapon, Sasuke asked. Naruto grinned evilly and said, this can summon 5 very powerful demons that will never die. Thanks Dobi. Sasuke smirked as he pointed the staff at the ground, causing a red mist to swirl before 5 scamps advanced. I am your master now, come, Sasuke said with a smirk and left, followed by the council members who forgot their fishy friend. Shiogarath formed into existence next to Naruto and remarked, I can't wait to see the look on his face a day from now, giving him the ever-scamp staff jolly good ha ha ha. Zabuza leapt from a nearby tree and said, "You should have let me rip their throats out." The only thing that set him apart was that he was wearing a Jonin vest, and his eyes were silled with a red and golden hue. Sakura asked from the balcony, wrapped in a bedsheet, "Naruto, what happened?" Shiagorath and Zabuza laughed perversely. Zabuza patted him on the back and remarked, "Ha ha ha, Ada boy, kid." After saying, "Anyway, Kakashi wanted me to tell you that today that the rookie 9 is supposed to meet at training ground 44, Zabuza disappeared, followed by Shiagorath. As he was getting dressed, Naruto said, "Sakura, we have to go to training ground 44. She said as she left, "I'll meet you there after I get Ayla." Ground 44 for training. Your senseis and I have decided to conduct a single, large-scale training exercise for the entire group initially. You will all work together, and then as teams deep in his book, Kakashi said. Shikamaru and Sasuke, first up, in front of the gathered crowd. With his 5 scamps at his side, Sasuke uttered the words, "HN, don't bother you, lazy loser." Shikamaru said, "This is so troublesome," as he walked languidly toward his opponent. "Leave." Shikamaru didn't wait for a response when he clasped his hands together and shadows burst from and towards a bewildered Sasuke, wrapping themselves around his arms, legs, and neck. Shikamaru walked slowly past him, flicked his wrist, and a shadow in the shape of a demonic sword, the Daedra long sword from Oblivion, formed in the palm of his hand and pressed it to his throat. Scamps simply stood there hissing in response to his command. With a yawn, Shikamaru declared, "I win." He then let go of all his shadows, moved back to his starting position, and lay down, leaving everyone in awe. Shikamaru said while lying down, "Oh, and I give that sword design idea from Naruto." Asuma expressed his admiration for his student's newfound ability, saying, "That was very interesting." "What's with the staff, Naruto?" Very pissed off, said Sasuke. "I'm teaching you something called humility. Those scamps won't leave you alone and are going to drive you crazy," Naruto grinned. Sasuke began, but was interrupted by a loud roar that reverberated throughout the element countries. He then said something that caused the roar to land in front of the group, knocking everyone off balance except Naruto. "You dare defy an Uchiha, an Alita." The words, "Drem yo loke, Daedra," were uttered by a large black and orange dragon with 4 enormous horns that grew past his head, deep black eyes with a sea-green dot in the center, and the scar that ran from his brow, chin, and ended at its scaly chest. "Who are you?" "You smell like Nern," Naruto remarked, squinting. "My name is Yvonne Volvalok, Golden, Dark, Guardian, and the Dremora of Curses has split the valley between the 2 worlds. It will take a few years, but Nern's influence will spread, and myself and my family will be the beneficiaries. The Dova arrived on your planet first, and I have a message from my lord, Alduin, asking for the Daedra's help in the next war, which is similar to yours but pits good against evil and everything that is Prusa against Vocal." The dragon lowered his back and said, "Come Dremora, my lord Alduin is waiting." Naruto leapt upon it. As he and Volume took to the skies, Naruto yelled, "I'll be back later guys." Sakura asked, "Should we report this to the Hokage?" "No, if those bastards on the civilian council get a whiff of this event he will be labeled as a missing nin, so no, we are not going to report it," Kakashi replied as he examined the genin. Sasuke thought, "This is my chance," and slowly retreated from the group before running into something. He turned his head slowly and saw a very angry she-wolf. Sakura cracked her knuckles as she asked, "And where are you going?" Sakura smirked as Sasuke remarked, "None of your business, you weak, useless, pathetic excuses for a ninja." Sasuke halted in mid-sentence, terrified, as Sakura's eyes flashed a deep shade of yellow before returning to their normal green. "What are you smirking on?" With pride, Ayla remarked, "You're talking to an alpha, so you better watch what you say, boy." Above the elemental nation's skies, Volume said as he flew through the air, "We are almost there, Dremora." Naruto asked, "So what does Alduin want with me?" "As I said, the last war was between the 9 divine and a few of your kin left the land scared, and many mortals caught in the crossfire meet their doom, and after countless battles the 9 Daedra sealed within you were banished from Nern and sent to this world. Now that its influence is crossing over, there will be another war, but not between the Dremora and divine but everything, and whoever wins this battle will shape the world. The Daedra are powerful and their alliance will be a great factor in the war," Volume stated. "I have one more question, why did the Dova cross over first?" Volume laughed. "My kind was near dead thanks to the Dovahkiin of Skyrim. After he killed Alduin in Sovngarde, the Akavir returned to the land and corrupted the Dovahkiin. They slaughtered my kin as if we were animals. Even Paarthuranxwho taught him the ways of the Thuum. Volume yelled with rage during the final sentence. Naruto looked down from the sky and said, I'm sorry. Hovering in mid-air, Volume declared, there is no need Dremora, we are here. They were in Iron Country, as far as Naruto could tell, which accounted for the snow after a short while. Volume opened his scaly lips and spoke, causing the air beneath them to change quickly. Before Naruto could inquire as to why the dragon noise plunged into the moving air, Volume said, you might want to hold on. A certain deranged god was hosting a party in Naruto's mind. Skydiving into the center of the new Shioth he created inside his portion of Naruto's mindscape, Shiagorath exclaimed, ha ha ha, I haven't felt this kind of a rush since my ex-wife Wee ha ha ha. Loud enough for the other princes to hear. When they emerged from the shifting air, darkness, and the sound of steadily flapping wings, Naruto cried out, Uhhhhshit, while clinging to Volume's horn. After a few minutes, a huge stricter slowly emerged. It appeared to be an ancient ruin with a huge yellow-white light in the background. Beneath them was a huge courtyard with a large, black object with deep red eyes. We touched down in front of the beast. As Naruto leapt off, Volume said, Alduin, I bring the carrier of the Dremiora. The black dragon remained silent and simply gazed at the boy. Alduin rose from the ground and spread his dark wings, saying, so you are the carrier of the Dremora. I can sense their power, you would make a worthy opponent. I am Alduin, firstborn of Akotosh and first of the Dova, and what name do I call you Dremora? Alduin replied with disdain. Sounding like all the princes at once, Naruto said, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, carrier of the 9 Daedric princes. Alduin nodded slightly in respect, and Naruto followed suit. I'm sure you understand why you are here. Dremora, the war that will change the world is about to begin. Nern is crossing over, and our forces will need leaders whether you like it or not. You will be one of them. The 9 divine and some of your kin are coming for you. Just as the Dremora of curses did, you will command the Dremora in when the conflict begins. You will be a mostly independent commander, but there will be a council of other generals like you, and we report to one person. Any other generals? Naruto inquired bewilderedly. Yes, I am one of the fallen gods or creatures, the dragon clarified. I've heard that the Dwemer will help us and some of your worshippers back in Nern, while others will be despised in due time. A man who appeared to be an Altmer with long dark silver hair and deep black highlights said, you forgot me, dragon. He was a little shorter than a Dreameria and wore dark robes underneath his armor, greaves, and gauntlets, but what stood out most was his black eyes that fell on Naruto. He wore a demonic breastplate with a black hand in the center that was glowing with an aura. I'm sorry, Scythus, Aluin said. The presence of the Scythus, whose eyes were fixed on Naruto, somewhat surprised him. In the back of Naruto's mind, Melphala uttered, that is the dread god Scythus, brother of Anu, the god of light, but more importantly, he is credited with creating the Daedra. He is our patron. The cold stare did not flinch until a slim arm wrapped itself around his neck. A sweet dark voice said, my dear dread father, you should be happy. And then a woman's head peered around his other shoulder. Her eyes were black like Scythus's, but with a white ring in the middle, and she was wearing a slim, reviling black dress. But what stood out most was the 5 bright balls of energy that flouted around her. Wink. Scythus's final words were dark but purposeful. I was simply examining my lost progenies. Most impressive. The woman smiled and kissed him before releasing the dread god to take a closer look at Naruto. I apologize for my husband's actions. It appears that I am the only one who can control him, but I tend to forget about myself. The recently appointed Night Mother declared, I am the Night Mother, a pleasure to make you acquaintance. I am Naruto Uzumaki, container of the Daedra princes, said Naruto. Alduin uttered the words, let us return to the task at hand, just before a metal clanking sound and then steam were heard, and then a man in golden armor with a blue crystal-like marital outline appeared in the center of the courtyard. Dwarven armor from Skyrim is not rusted, but yellow-hot, outlined with ethereal. The man looked through the visor of his helmet before removing it to reveal an elf-like being with dark tan skin, a yellow-brown beard, and dread locks of the same color. I am the Dwemer's king, Dunmak. I am here to speak for my people, the man said authoritatively. You mentioned we would report to someone. Alduin, who is that person? Naruto inquired. That would be me, was said by a voice from above, which made Naruto turn to face the man who was lying back idly in midair. He was wearing a smooth mask that covered his face and extended around his head, ending with twin spikes. Think of Strife's helmet from Darksiders. Don't own that ether. He also had a white scarf around his neck, a smooth shoulder-less guard breastplate with odd engravings, and baggy cargoes adorned with greaves. And who are you? Naruto inquired. The man flouted down and said, I go by many names, trickster, the missing god, sure, but I would rather be called Lorcan. In addition to taking the elves' immortality, I am credited with creating Nern. However, I died to bring creation to Nern, leaving Akatosh and the other divines in charge. That was a mistake, but I'm rambling now that our two worlds are entwining, which is not good. There will be war, and we will fight it together. The missing god told Naruto, you will be a key ascent in the war, but that is a ways off. Before you leave, we have gifts for you. He then put his hand on his glowing cheeks, giving Naruto a boost of energy. The trickster said, this will allow you to access a powerful form for a short period of time. My gift to you, simply speak fire's rage. Alduin then came up and yelled at him, knocking him off his feet. I've given you 3 things. The dragon priest Mirok, the trencher's dragon priest summon, and Konarek the warlord mask. Lastly, you might absorb volume, which would enable you to call upon him or fly independently. Alduin remarked, these are the gifts of the Dova, and then Dumik materialized in front of Naruto. The dwarf king pulled out a 50 caliber revolver handgun with a golden metal dwarven design on the sights, grip, and chamber made of ethereal. Well, we Dwemer don't place much faith in magic but in technology. Here's a task of my people's masterful work, he said. At that moment, the Scythus appeared and took Naruto's right hand, causing a dark purple-black allurement to flare around his now skeleton hand before subsiding. Naruto reappeared at Konoha after Scythus said, when you trochee anything with that hand you rip into their very soul. Speak the black hand to activate it, now be gone. He chose to eat at Ichiraku after assessing his surroundings and determining that he was 1.5 miles from the village. He activated his Daedric armor and leapt into the skies as soon as he saw smoke in the air after entering the main gate, and even worse, it was coming from his destination. A crowd of villagers with torches and 2 burned bodies dangling by the neck greeted Naruto as he landed down the street. No! Was Naruto's cry as he swung the Hersen's spear, jumped on the first villager he could, thrust the weapon through his chest, tore off his head for good measure, and kicked him with an axe to the ground. How dare you, you demon! One peasant shouted, how dare I? You're all dead, Black Hand. I haven't had the fox in 9 years. One unfortunate villager was crawling away with a severely burned back when Naruto yelled, causing his hand to turn into a purple-black flame. He pointed one finger at the man, causing him to slowly wither away until nothing was left but bones. Then, he pulled out his dwarven gun and fired all 6 rounds with lighting nature infused with the bullets, blowing holes in the crowd and almost destroying the street. Naruto slowly walked behind him before grabbing the back of his head and lifting him off the ground. Why? Answer me. What did they do to deserve this? Naruto shouted. Ta they a feed a thea da di demon they a deservada everything a they a go to hee when we cutta the mansa eyes outa anda when we repaida that a bitcha. The villager's spit out caused Naruto to snap, cocking his right hand back and thrusting it into the man's back to ensure his survival. He grabbed the man's spine and ripped his head, spine through both to the ground, then roared in an unholy voice that was heard throughout the village. Naruto, what happened? The elderly man asked, experiencing a wave of déjà vu. Abruptly, Naruto felt a hand on his shoulder and said, they killed them because they cared for me. They still think I'm the fox. He was staring at the ground. Naruto, you are not to blame. They are narrow-minded idiots. Do not place the blame on yourself, his grandfather said. Earlier, Kakashi visited my office and signed you up for the Chunin exams. Naruto, you should report to the academy on Monday at 7 a.m. We'll take care of their bodies, so go home and rest, Sarubito said. After saying, okay grandpas, Naruto turned off his abilities and slowly teleported to his house, leaving the blood-stained and smoking street behind. Ninja Academy Gate, 6:55 a.m. on Monday. Sakura had been waiting for her teammates for the last 15 minutes, and she was gradually becoming irate. She had changed into the same armor as Ayla the Huntress, a female version of the ancient Nord armor, and chopped off her hair. She turned to see Sasuke coming with his 5 Everscamps. What the devil do you attach to yourself? Sakura inquired. Sasuke appeared to have just returned from a week of sleep after running through a battlefield. Sasuke nodded off, saying, these stupid things have kept me up for the past 3 days. Sakura sighed and put her hand on his eyes, sending a little healing chakra that she had learned from the academy. When she took her hand away, it appeared as though he had just woken up. We need you, as much as I hate to say it. A pack is strongest when they're together, Sakura said, then saw Naruto approaching their destination. Judging by his expression, he appeared depressed, and she and the majority of the village already knew why. A flashback from 2 days ago. Unaware of what had happened the night before, Sakura and Ayla were traveling to Ichiraku's ramen bar. As they turned the corner, she witnessed a horrifying scene. Blood smoldered on the ground. A team of Ambu were gathering up the body parts of the victims, and the majority of the street had been destroyed, with smoke still clinging to the remaining buildings. Sakura grabbed the arm of a passing medic and said, "Excuse me, what happened here? I'm not at liberty to say, but what I heard from one of the Ambu that had accompanied the Hokage was that a crowd of villagers brutally killed the owners of the ramen bar, then desecrated their bodies. I understand that they were close to that boy. What was his name? Naruto. Naruto." Sakura cried out. "That's the one. Anyway, he lost it and completely massacred the crowd by himself." One witness said he ripped a man's spine out, according to the doctor. "He was very close to them." "Kami, what made them act in this way?" the she-wolf asked. "There was something carved into the corpse of one of the owners. They feed demons." The flashback concludes. "Hey guys," Naruto said, sounding lifeless, and Sakura gave him a reassuring embrace. She whispered in Naruto's ear, "I'm sorry, I heard what happened." Sasuke said, "Can we leave now? We're going to be late," as he entered the building, followed by Naruto and Sakura. Academy. Second floor. Naruto passed the group of students arguing with the guards at the incorrect exam door. "Hey losers, you know that's tea," Sasuke began, but he was holding his mouth shut. Naruto said, "Don't, let them be, it will eliminate the competition," before he was stopped by a voice. "Yash, Uzumaki-san, please give me a youthful spare." Everyone's favorite bushy-breeded, bold-headed ninja said. "We don't have time for this, Lee. We don't have to deny our strengths," a boy with a large frame said. A girl with buns declared, "We will fight them soon enough." Naruto said emotionlessly, "I apologize, maybe some other time," before heading to the actual exam room. Exam room. Cyclops, a sensei, said, "Yo," just before the team came in. "Sensei?" Sakura inquired. "What? Is it not possible for a teacher to wish his pupils luck?" Kakashi grinned as he spoke. "Naruto, I heard what happened. Your actions were justified, but some of the children of those you killed are taking the exams. They'll want blood," Kakashi said with seriousness. "I'll kill them as well, Sensei," Naruto said, his eyes becoming glazed. "I once heard a quote with an insane smile," Naruto said. "Kill one, you're a murderer. Kill two, you're a conqueror. But kill them all and you're a god." He then brushed past his sensei and directly into the room, drawing everyone's attention. After concluding that the children who were drawing their weapons were the victims, he unleashed a great deal of killer intent. "Sue who dies first, ha ha ha," was exactly what Naruto meant when he said it in a Dagon tone. Shikamaru wondered, is this really Naruto, not surprised after what went down? A boy with white hair and glasses approached the group and said, "You might want to keep it down." Naruto changed his tone to one of a Herson and said, "Why? Let the prey see their hunter coming." "Well, I'm Kabuto. I'm a bit of an expert of the exams, done them 7 times, not passed once but I'll give you info on other ninjas participating," Kabuto clarified. "HN Naruto Uzumaki, Rock Lee, Gaara of the Sand," said Sasuke. Sakura sighed as Ino, wishing to emulate Sakue, said, "And for Hida I mean Sakura Horeno." Ino smirked and said, "What, you made because he likes me more than you, huh?" Sakura held her hand up and transformed it into her best form, causing Ino to scream and stagger back, firmly shutting her up. No, the old me would, but she died and became something greater, stronger, and deadlier. That's interesting. Anyway, Naruto Uzumaki goes by the allies, Daedric Lord of Konoha. Teammates Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Horeno. Sensei is Kakashi Hatika, has completed 15 D ranks. 1 C rank turned a rank fighting Zabuza Monomichi Demon of the Mist, combating and killing an unclassified god like being on said mission. That's very interesting. Rock Lee teammates are Neji Hyuga and Tenten. I don't think she has a last name. I looked it up. Has completed 23 D ranks, 2 C ranks and 1 A rank. No reported Chakura, Ninjutsu or Genjutsu, a master of Taijutsu. Gaara of the Sand teammates are also his siblings Tamari and Kankura of the Sand, son of the Kazakaga, container of Shikaku Tail Beast of the Sand, has completed 2 D ranks, 14 C ranks, 5 A ranks while 3 S ranks, and has always returned without a scratch, Kabuto clarified. Put this on your cards. Kabuto heard a high-pitched noise and a voice yell at him without even flinching. Naruto took the blowhead on after shoving him to the ground. Naruto grinned as he pulled out his dwarven gun and thrust the barrel into the hole in his hand, causing him to fall to his knees and scream. He turned to see Zaku cocking his handpack with the palm exposed in order to deliver a sound punch. "Enough," was uttered by a terrified man who appeared in front of the classroom. The man said, "Take your seats or it's back to the academy for all of you." I'll be your instructor Ibiki Morino, before making his way over to the group that was fighting. Ibiki said, I said enough, which made Naruto smile even more. Then, he twisted the gun out of Zakus's hand and aimed it at Ibiki's face. The frightened man asked, Are you insane? Naruto cocked the hammer back in response. His tone changed to that of a mad god. Oh, you don't know the half of it, he said. Naruto lowered the gun and remarked, But you've done me no wrong. Kabuto said, Thank you, as he rose from the ground. Ibiki walked to the front of the room and said, Now take your seats. You will now be given a test that will be completed in 20 minutes, but know this: if you are caught cheating, you and your team begin, Ibiki said. After 5 minutes leaning back idly at his desk, Naruto said, I need to thank her mouse later for giving me the answers. Naruto thought, but about Kabuto? Yeah, he's a spy. Thank you, Boethia, for helping me uncover that little plot. In Naruto's mind, the Prince of Plots thought, I may not make a habit of this. The things your kind plans are simply delouses. As Ibiki said sharply, some hands went up and teams left. Okay, pencils down. I will now administer the final question. A word of warning. If you do not answer correctly, you will be forever barred from entering the exams again, but if you give up, you may try next year. The man said, Now for those who remain. The final question. Issa, you pass. Suddenly, a purple-headed woman and a banner flew through the window. Konoha's #1 sexiest, single kunoichi is here. Enko Mitarashi, the woman exclaimed as she entered. Ibiki tried not to perspire as he whispered, You're a little early, Enko. Enko scanned the room before hearing a weasel-like sound. Man, Ibiki, look at all the brats. I think you're losing your touch. She turned to see it coming from a young man with red hair. She was on top of his desk in an instant, putting her hands around his neck. When he put his arm around her waist and gave her a passionate kiss, everyone gasped. Well, not everyone. Sakura laughed a little, but one white-eyed girl was devastated. You got something to say, brat? She cooed in a playful way. After breaking the kiss, Enko exclaimed, What the hell? She then turned to face Naruto, who had a predator-like gleam in his eye, and he lent her ear until he barely touched it. In a deep Molig Bowl voice, Naruto uttered, You taste and smell like death, it's so arousing. Enko, for her part, was initially taken aback before acquiring the same sparkle as him. The statement, Oh, you don't know what you gotten yourself into, is equally hormone-driven and huskily from Enko. After grinning, Naruto let out a deep purr or growl, bit her neck, and slowly slithered his hands under her fishnet shirt until he felt her bras lacing and unhooked it. Ibiki was experiencing a facial spasm. Sakura grinned and got soaked. Dude, Naruto! Exclaimed Kiba, who wanted to exchange places with Naruto in order to sell his soul to the Shimigami. Naruto smirked and said, What? I'm a lean, mean killing machine and I'm feeling frisky, before going back to work on Enko's neck. Ibiki gave a loud, ahem, cough to get their attention. To put an end to this madness would be an understatement, according to Ibiki. If you two are done, Enko explained the next part of the exam. Enko turned her attention back to Naruto, who licked the crook of her neck and grinned. Ooh, do I have to find? Listen up, brats, report to Training Ground 44 aka the Forest of Death tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. Now shut the hell up, she yelled. Enko hit the floor with a thud as he said, Sorry, babe, but we'll have to finish this another time. She glanced around and her eyes started to twitch. She yelled, Oh, that little shit when I get my hand on him, and then exited the room, leaving everyone perspiring. Ibiki was gathering papers after everyone had cleared out when he saw something scrawled at the bottom. It is Naruto Uzumaki's paper. Hey Scareface, how are you? I'm fine, thanks for asking. You should tell the Hokage something, though. That kid Kabuto is a spy, and for Orochimaru no less. Don't worry, I have a great source, so you should go after him and do what you do best. Good luck with the snake hunting, and don't forget to tell Enko I said hello. When Ibiki realized how serious this situation is, if the punk was correct, he quickly disappeared, but he did grow a tick mark at that last statement. Monument to Hokage. With his arms folded, Naruto stood above the head of the 4th Hokage. Surveying the village, he was reminded of that night 9 years ago because night had fallen and there was a full moon in the sky. As he recalled what he had done to those people, a dark smile spread across his face. A voice yelled, Hey you! From behind. When Naruto turned, he saw 3 children. A young girl with orange hair and pale skin was on the far left, and a plump boy on his right had a bowl-shaped hairstyle that covered his eyes. The person in the center had spiky white hair and was dressed entirely in black, as though he was on a secret mission. His companions were all dressed similarly. The middle boy took a step forward. The boy yelled, attempting to sound poetic, You killed my father and so I will kill you, but before he could move, Naruto had already broken his neck from behind. The fat boy shouted, "Jen, no," and then lunged towards Naruto, aiming a kunai at him in the hopes that it would strike, but it failed. Naruto was by the boy's side before he could blink, then he grabbed and twisted his arm from behind. "I am going to kill you for my father and best friend," he shouted. Hopeless, Naruto thought, then violently jerked this arm before ripping it from its owner completely before the boy could scream. Naruto kicked him brutally to the side, sending him flying off the monument. He then slowly turned his head to face the girl, who was motionless, sobbing, and whispering something, and as he got closer to her, he started to see her. The girl sobbed, "I tried to tell them, but they wouldn't listen." Naruto mockingly questioned, "What, you're not going to try and avenge your family?" After calming down a little, the girl said, "I lost nobody to you, they brought me along so I could see the demon demise, as they put it." Naruto sounded like a Herson as he said, "Well, I want you to pass a little message for me." What? The frightened girl asked during a night of uncontrollable laughter. Naruto said, "I want you to tell anyone who want to take me on is more than welcome, but also tell them about your friends, ha 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 ha, as before." Training Ground 44. Chunin Exams Second Phase. When Naruto arrived, he saw a crowd at the main gate entrance where his team was supposed to meet. Some people shivered in fear, while others left. Everyone knew who he was in one way or another. He walked over to the rookie 9 and his team. A kunai swooped past everyone's heads and grazed Naruto's cheek before anyone could react to his "hey" call. Naruto smirked as a certain snake mistress wrapped her arms around his torso and said, "Hello Gaki, you own me for yesterday." She also liked the trickle of blood that came from his face. Naruto uttered the seductive demonic words, "Don't worry, I'm going to pay you back in full." "Good," she said, pleased with his response, and then she looked at the other pupils. "As for the rest of you, this phase of the exam is all about survival. You have 5 days to get to the tower located in the middle of the forest after you obtain a heaven and earth scroll that you will receive shortly. Now sign these forms," Enko continued. Ino questioned, "What are the forms for?" "We won't be held accountable if you die," Enko remarked, laughing menacingly. Die, but it's just a test," exclaimed Ino. Enko said gravely, "Well, if you want to quit and take your entire team down with you, be my guest. There's no room for weak ninja in the world," which silenced Ino. Choji inquired, "What about food?" At the end, Enko laughed and said, "The forest is full of it, but you can always resort to cannabises. With a little salt you'd make a good-sized pork chop, haha." Sakura was licking her lips to the side, imagining the meal of a fresh kill. "Begin!" Enko shouted, and everyone in the group leapt into the woods. "The main gate is 100 yards away. Hey Dobi, I think the strongest one should carry the scroll," Sasuke replied. Naruto answered, "But I am carrying the scroll." Sasuke grinned and said, "HNU? Strong? Please, I have more power in my finger than you do in your whole body?" Naruto smiled and tried not to laugh as he said, "Okay, prove it. I want you to kill all those rain nin behind you." When Sasuke slowly turned his head, he realized Naruto was telling the truth. 3 of them were present. The 3 they met in the anime. Unsheathing the short sword on his back, the person in the center said, "Give us the scroll and we might let you live." Sasuke charged without uttering a word, shouting something about Uchiha might, but as he got close to them, the person in the middle backhanded him, sending him hurtling into a nearby tree. Naruto laughed to himself as he said, "Well, that was expected," but he was stopped by a hand. Sakura pulled her 2 steel daggers from her hips and held them in a reversal grip before saying, "Let me." The rain nin on the right, grinning beneath his mechanical mask, said, "OWW, douse the little girl want to play ninja haha," before lunging towards her with his weapon up. He stopped abruptly as he was 5 feet away from her. He fell to his knees and tore off his mask, allowing himself to cough up the blood that was starting to form in his throat and onto the forest floor. He looked down and saw 2 dagger hilts in his stomach and one in his upper chest. Sakura smirked as she got closer to her target, flashing her deep yellow eyes and flashing her wolf-like fangs. She brought the knives to her face, licked the blood off, and then sheathed them after grabbing both hilts and violently sliding them across, sending 3 large pieces of flesh crashing to the cold ground. Sakura shifted her right arm, let out a deep growl, dropped to all 4s in a feral position, and charged at the 2 ninjas that were still there. The person in the center tried to axe kick the charging she-wolf, but she grabbed his ankle and used him as a weapon to strike the other rain ninja, sending him flying into a large tree's trunk. She grabbed the nin by the ankle and lifted him over her head while holding him by the neck. Then she threw him onto her knee, and his spine crunched, breaking and then chunking his lifeless body to the ground. Following that, she focused on the final nin who was leaping from the tree to her position. Sakura grinned as she waited for the ideal opportunity to grab him by the head, slam him into the chilly forest floor, and meet his eyes directly. With his eyes fixed on his assailant, the Rain Ninja said without flinching, "Do it. I won't beg for my life." Following his instructions, Sakura pushed her right arm into the man's chest and then tore out his heart. Hersen said, emerging from the shadows of the forest, "Well done, young hunter." Sakura bowed her head respectfully and dropped to one knee. The she-wolf uttered, "Lord Hersen, you honor me." Hersen approached Sakura and put his hand on her head, saying, "You honor all of my hounds this day, young huntress, and for showing such ferocity you will have my blessing." The Daedric prince began to fade away, saying, "You have my favor and blessing, and tonight you can prove it with me." After getting his blessing, Sakura felt strong and asked, "What do you mean, Lord Hersen?" Hurricane exclaimed, "Tonight, young huntress, the blood moon will rise," as her excitement subsided. Sakura said as she stood up, "Ta the blood moon, Ayla told me about it." While searching through the dead ninjas, Naruto remarked, "Yeah, oh look, just the scroll we need." Sasuke staggered out of the bushes, rubbing his jaw and saying, "Oh what happened?" Naruto grinned and said, "Sakura killed them all by herself." Sasuke asked incredulously, "What?" before noticing the torn-out heart Sakura was still clutching. Upon emerging from the forest floor, a grass nin remarked, "Ku, you look a fine specimen, Sasuke-kun." Naruto questioned, "And who are you?" The grass nin said, "It doesn't matter who I am, Kyuubi brat, what matters is Sasuke and maybe you later down the road." Suddenly, a gigantic snake shot its head at Naruto in an attempt to devour him. Persian jumped as the snake connected with the ground and landed on its head. He then pulled out his dwarven gun, shoved it into the base of the beast's skull, fired fire nature-infused bullets that blew off a portion of its head and went poof. With a Dagon tone, Naruto asked, "That all you got?" With a sly smile, Naruto called forth the ebony blade and jumped at the grass nin, who was also crossing blades with him. "Infernal demon!" exclaimed the nin, drawing a sword from his throat. The nin shouted, "You won't stop me," as they pushed the Narutos. Naruto's explosive yell, "You're right, I'm not going to stop you, I am going to kill you," caused his opponent to stumble a little, which gave him the opening he needed to kick him in the ribs, grab his sword hand, pull it over his head, and thrust the ebony blade into his shoulder from beneath his armpit. The nin screamed, "A ghh damn you," then stretched his neck to give Sasuke a hick and a curse mark before retreating back into his body. Naruto sarcastically remarked, "That was wrong in so many ways," but a snake wrapped around his waist and threw him to the ground. The snake bit Naruto's chest, causing him to grunt in agony before snapping its neck and making it go poof. "Another time, demon. Eventually Sasuke will seek me out for power, haha," he said, sinking into the ground. Naruto collapsed as he said, Sakura, how's Sasuke?" Dame Ida, that snake poisoned me, Sakura shouted, "Naruto," before turning to face Sasuke, who was wailing in agony. Sakura yelled, "Damn it," and then Aaliyah appeared. Ayla picked up Sasuke on her back and said, "Sakura, we need to get your pack to somewhere safe." Sakura did the same with Naruto. The current camp of Team 7, the anime version, Sakura sighed, perhaps for the 100th time, as she observed her teammates unconscious. Naruto should have died because the venom struck his heart directly, but with 9 gods, death is a little difficult. "There's our target, Sasuke Uchiha," Kin declared while hiding with her group. Sakura grabbed her daggers and remarked, "What, I remember you from the exam room." "That's right, and I've got a score to settle with the blonde. Come on, don't make us hurt you. If you're a good girl we can have some fun," Zaku said with a sly grin. A white flashbang exploded in front of Sakura before anyone could react, and Thena confetti start to fall, with none other than Shiagorath in the center, holding his arms apart like an actor leaving the red carpet and brandishing his reliable wabakik. To the confusion of the sound crew, the mad god declared, "Fear not, little lass, Uncle Shio is her cheese for everyone." To the fury of Shiagorath, who raised his fist in the air, Zaku asked the other, "What the hell is cheese?" The mad god screamed, "What? No chess? Am I in hell again? Say hello to my little friend." They grabbed the Wabajack in both hands like a gun, quickly moved his hands up and down to make a gun cocking sound, then lowered it to his hip and fired it like an automatic weapon. As the Wabajack fired in several directions, striking Dosu and transforming him into a roll of toilet paper, he laughed and said, "Ahahahaha. God, I'm terrible." Zaku said, "Oh shit, Kin, get down," as he ducked behind 2 bushes. Sakura awoke from her daze to see Naruto with black eyes and the Oblivion symbiote in the middle of his pups. The mad god had said, "Ah, the kid is awake, my work is done." Naruto said in a molig bull tone, "Ha ha ha, damn Sakura, you know how to stir up some fun." He then casually pointed his gun at the bush where Zaku had taken cover and fired lightning-fast bullets, completely destroying the area. He then turned to face his shocked kin. Naruto said, "Oi, girl, what's your name?" She said sharply, "Kin Suchi, if you're going to kill me, do it already." "No, I won't kill you, but I will question you," Naruto said almost smugly. "Why are you hurt?" inquired Naruto. Kin questioned, "Why should I tell you anything?" "Because if you cooperate, I'll have you places under my protection so that now one will hurt you, also you won't have to go back to your old life," said Naruto. Dumbfounded, Kin said, What are you talking about, old life?" Naruto hit the nail on the head when he said, "You have the same eyes as me. I can see you've been lied to, betrayed, broken, hurt, and left for dead. Okay, we were here to kill Sasuke Uchiha for Orochimaru, who plans an invasion at the end of the Chunin exams, and to kill the Hokage," Kin clarified, stunned by the blonde's poignant remarks. "Thank you, Kin. You can travel with us, however you may want to stick close to me tonight," said Naruto. Kin questioned, "Why?" "Because the blood moon will rise, and trust me, you don't want to be considered prey," Naruto grinned. It was 10 minutes before sunset later that day. Ayla asked, "Sakura, are you ready?" Sakura grinned and replied, "Yes, I'm ready." Sakura blushed when Ayla said, "This will be your first full-turn, child. It may hurt at first, but you will reap the rewards also. Ditch the armor before you transform." With a smug smile, Naruto said, "Haha, don't be bashful, Sakura. It's like I haven't seen you that way before," making Kin fall to the ground. Sakura slowly unclasped her armor and said, "Shut up, Naruto." A few minutes later, she was as bear-like as the day she was born, and the sun had set. Ayla uttered the words, "Here we go," before collapsing to the ground and screaming in agony. Sakura was on her knees, repeatedly slamming her hand into the ground to dull the pain, and she soon noticed that her bones were breaking, twisting, and changing. They both awakened in their full werewolf transformations. After a few more minutes of suffering, Sakura had a more spiky mane running down her back with pink tips, and her claws had a sharpened aura likely from Hersen's blessing. Ayla, on the other hand, looked like a typical black woman. "Fly, my hunters, fly!" Hersen's voice abruptly shattered the red-lit night, eliciting multiple howls. In return, Ayla and Sakura followed their lord's orders and fled into the night. Kin asked Naruto, to whom she was clinging, "What are they?" Naruto grinned and said, "Hunter, one of the best." Then he saw that his relatives were holding him. The girl blushed when Naruto added the suffix, "You seem to be enjoying yourself, Kin-chan." Though it was difficult to tell with the blood moon out, Naruto grinned and put his arms around her waist. Kin said, What are you doing?" Naruto asked sexily, "Are you objecting?" before nipping at the girl's neck. She grinned as she relished the little thrills of approval she was getting. The lichens wouldn't be the only ones howling tonight, so she said, almost laughing, "Only if you stop," as they both moved farther into the cave where they were hiding. Sakura was furious and felt complete, as if she had just taken her first deep breath. She grinned as she recalled the memory of returning to the camp while still nude and covered in blood from all of the game's prey from the previous evening. Flashback. Following the blood moon's rise last night, as Sakura and Ayla ran through the forest on all fours in their lichen skins in search of their next meal, Hersen's voice broke the chilly night. "Fly, my hunters, take your prey," he exclaimed. After landing on top of a hill, the she-wolves paused to take a whiff of the air. Ayla turned right, still running at full speed, to flank the unfortunate campers after smelling another team camping 150 meters off the hill's base and saying, "Pre," in a morphed voice. Sakura slowly moved beyond the tree line until she could see the camp clearly. 3 tents were erected by a small river, and the people living there were gathered around a small fire. One shivered a little and said, "Damn, it's cold out here." A black shadow sped past him as he stood up, saying, "Haha, apparently you've never been to Iron Country." He then fell back onto the fire, dead with a huge hole in his throat. One of them hurried out of the camp, promising to return later. Sakura attacked the lone survivor who was lying in the river. Ayla then grabbed his neck, and both wolves gave birth violently, their mouths dripping with saliva as they savored the aroma of the impending meal. Sakura bit his right shoulder, while Ayla bit his jawline, yanking in opposing directions until the nin was torn in half and slowly devoured. The not-so-soul savior exclaimed, "Pant, I think, pant, lost a m he hgh," before being lifted by the neck by Sakura and Ayla, who were still insatiably hungry for more food than Nin, were not blind to this. He said, "I hope I give you the shits, you fucking wimps." 1. Before being ripped to pieces and eaten. Ends of flashbacks. Sakura decided to check on her team after finding her armor on a tree stump after burping and making her way to the camp. As she moved farther into the cave, Sasuke was still unconscious and could only grin when she discovered a naked Kin sleeping on top of an equally nude Naruto. With his eyes still closed, Naruto smirked and said, "You know, if you keep staring you're gonna get a nosebleed." Sakura smirked and shot back, "This is a dangerous game you're playing, Naruto, haha." After carefully moving his relatives away from him, Naruto located his clothes and started getting dressed. Zipping up his red jacket, Naruto said, "We should head for the tower as soon as possible. I take it your hunt went well." Sakura grinned and said, "Yes, I feel whole for the first time in my life." As they began to wake up, Kin said, Naruto-kun, where are you?" As Naruto left the cave, he passed Sasuke, who was still asleep, and said, "Come on, babe, it's time to get dressed." Naruto heated his hand with a little fireball spell and touched Sasuke on the chest, saying, "I'm not going to carry you." After a few seconds of the burning, Sasuke leapt 15 to 20 feet into the air. "Ah, what the hell, loser," Sasuke exclaimed, massaging his burned chest. "You wouldn't wake up," was Naruto's straightforward statement. An irritated Sasuke remarked, "And couldn't have carried me." Naruto only said, "No," as Sakura and Kin left the camp. Sasuke looked at his relatives and asked, "Who is this?" After saying, "This is Kin, she is under my custody," Naruto approached her and put his arm around her neck. Sasuke said smugly, believing it was unfair that a loser like him was given so many women, "Then she should be serving an Uchiha and bend to my will, and help resurrect my clan, not some worthless freak like you." "Anyway, let's just head to the tower," Naruto said, adding that he didn't feel like hurting Hima, at least not yet. The group then headed for the tower. The entrance to the Forest of Death Tower. The group went from campsite to the tower in a short time, and Iruka made an appearance with a poof as they started down the corridor. "Hi Naruto, I'm happy that your team managed to make it work." As the smoke cleared, Shigorath was waiting, but Iruka said, "You have 4 days to rest up while the other teams arrive." When the Mad God noticed Kin, he said, "Top of the morning to ya, lad." He bowed and said, "Ah, hello Lays, I'm Shigorath, a pleasure." He then took her hand and kissed it tenderly. Naruto smirked Letha Lily and said, "Be careful, you Mad Hatter. I just came to visit and get some cheese, ah glory's cheese, but what's wrong with enjoying the company of the fair sex? Haha, something you know well." The Scotsman finally became serious and said, "But to a more dull matter, I believe another Daedric prince is coming over as well as some other influences." "Are you aware of who?" Naruto uttered those words. "We have eliminated 2 potential candidates in closing," Shigorath remarked somewhat dejectedly, "Meridia or Jigalag, my predecessor." "What is the predecessor, in your opinion?" Naruto inquired. "I used to be mortal, and I traveled to the Icy Isles to win Shigorath's crown. I did so, and I faithfully served him for 2 years before the Grey March cycle began. Shigorath became Jigalag, who was cursed to become agents of everything he stood for. I defended him and freed him from his cures in a single battle, and in exchange I became a god," the Mad God said, implying that he was somewhat mortal. "Thanks, Shio," Naruto remarked. He said, "I," before disappearing once more into Naruto's psyche. As he headed to their designated room, Naruto remarked, "Well, I'm going to go get some rest. Warning. Eat a lot of lemon, kids listen up, you need to learn, young haha." As he walked in, he felt something grab him from behind. "Time to pay up," a famine voice said, then licked his eardrum. Naruto smirked, then whipped around and picked her up. In return she wrapped her legs around his waist. He carried Anko to the bed located in the room, constantly in lip lock, their tongues fighting for dominance. He almost gently laid her on the bed and in a swift motion ripped her trench coat, fishnet shirt, and bra off. Not even gracing the skin, he quickly got his tops off and proceeded to nip at her neck, then her collarbone and then her right breast while groping the other. As a reward she moaned in pleasure while clawing his back. Slowly and steady, he worked his way down from her breast to her flat stomach, then bit down on the lacing of her skirt and pennies, then ripped them off. Licking his way down into her nether rejoins and finally to her entrance, then Barley graced her outer walls with his tongue, causing Anko to shiver with pleasure. Satisfied with her reaction, Naruto shot his tongue into her core, getting a very loud moan before she wrapped her exposed legs around his neck to push him further inward. He keep his tongue in check from a swirling motion. then lightly licking the clit. After repeating the action, he got showered with sweet-tasting juices. Anko felt Naruto making his way back up the same way he had come down, and she tried desperately to catch her breath while grinning broadly the whole time. Naruto smirked and said, "You ready, babe?" Rather than respond, Anko just gripped his erotic member, causing Naruto to groan sharply. Anko grinned and said, "Shut up and fuck me already," before sliding his pants and thrusting fully into her, causing her to scream with pure blissful pleasure. He counted to thrust inward, gradually increasing the speed. "Aha aha, keep it going, don't ah," Anko barely uttered before reaching her climax. Naruto wasn't quite done yet. After a few more thrusts, she roared in a demonic voice before collapsing next to her. "Womp womp wamp lemon," and Anko, gasping for air, said, "Damn Kita, you're good." Naruto smirked. "So I've been told." He went to get up but was tackled by Sakura with Kin quickly jumping on him as well. "And where do you think you're going, Daedra?" As three women charged at him, Sakura spoke in a seductive manner. The mindscape of Naruto Shigorath yelled to the other princes, "By all that Ia blessed cheese, how much can this kid take? He's given Molig a run for his money." "Where do you suppose he obtains it?" Molig said incoherently. "Note to self, next time he sleeps, make sure he does not get any rest," was the nocturnal thought as she passed out from the nosebleed. 3 days later, back in the real world, Genma Shiranui, "I'll be proctoring you. Proceed to engage in combat with the opponent of your choice when your name is called." Some teams cringed at the end when Genma said, "Your Apunet must for the fet, knock unconscious, or kill to win." Uzumaki Naruto vs Lee Rock. Finally, a chance to ignite my youthful flames, Yosh. Somersaulted done to the arena after the bold-headed ninja yelled and his lookalike gave another yosh. For his part, Naruto was engulfed in a red and black mist before appearing on the ground in front of Lee. As Lee bowed, Naruto responded with a smile and a slight nod. "Uzumaki-san, I have wanted to fight you since the news of you killing a god reached my youthful ears. Please do not hold back." "Begin!" Ganma shouted, and both fighters vanished into thin air. For a brief moment, everyone appeared perplexed. "Wait for it, wait for it." Everybody looked up to see a red and green bluer appear and disappear on the ground, floor, and ceiling. Then both of them manifested as they did. Their first collision caused another shockwave of power, which sent the two fighters in opposite directions. Boom! Literally broke the air, sending shockwaves of power that caused some people to slam into the wall. At the same moment, both of them regained their balance, with Naruto standing with a crazy smile stuck to his face. "I applaud you." Lee. Naruto crossed his arms and said, "You are a worthy opponent." "Are you okay with me getting serious, Uzumaki-san?" Lee said, letting go of all his weights. "I have to." As it cleared, Naruto stood wearing his Daedric Prince armor, causing a whirlwind of power to escalate to the point where Gaara's sand had to cover him. Naruto yelled in a Molig Bull voice, then bit his finger and lightly touched his oblivion tattoo on the side of his neck, causing a bright red light. After a moment of concern, Lee turned to face his sensei. "Yes, Lee, I agree with you." Guy uttered those words while clinging to the railing and the barley. Lee slammed his hands together, closed his eyes, and yelled, "Gate of opening. Open." Lee is being violently stirred by energy as a result of this. "Open the gate of healing." The energy surged and flowed around him as a result. "Life's gate. Open." His eyes turned white and his skin turned red as a result. "Limit gate. Open." His chakra swirled wildly around him as a result. Imagine Super Saiyan. Naruto didn't even notice the blur as Lee bounded forward at an unnatural speed. His body trembled violently, and nearly invisible blurs appeared all over him as Lee threw kicks and hits before sending the blonde Daedra hurtling through the air with an uppercut. Naruto was not entirely defenseless, though, as he turned at the last second and caught Lee's burning fist. Lee viciously side-kicked him in return, but Naruto held on and, at full speed, threw Lee into the arena's side. Instead of slamming his hand down, Naruto kept his claw-like fingers arched and slowly placed them at his side. Kamehameha, after flouting slightly off the ground and making a swirling motion. Lighting storm. Crash down from the heavens, turn everything we hold dear to ash. The bold-headed beast's only option was to block the blue-white beam that shot out at Lee as Naruto finished his chant and thrust forward. Lee took the blast head-on, placing his arm crosswise in front of his body, and he winced in pain as the energy burned through his flesh, bone, marrow, and clothes. Naruto abruptly stopped his attack and appeared behind Lee, slamming the Molig Bull mace into his right leg, causing him to fall to one knee. Naruto then hit Lee with a bone-crunching side kick, knocking him to the ground and deactivating his powerful form. Lee attempted to stand up, but was struck by Naruto's metal foot slamming on his chest, and the demonic mace was shoved an inch from his face. Lee, you are a valiant warrior deserving of honor and respect. Still speaking in a demonic voice, Naruto said, there is no shame in forfeiting. Don't make me kill you. Lee put up his hand to give up, but he only had one, which sent him into a state of shock. Naruto saw this and winced, then put his own hand over Lee's remaining hand. In a matter of seconds, a green energy encircled it, and his hand gradually returned to life. Yash Uzaniki-san, we'll win this battle one day, Lee declared, holding onto his armored hand as he assisted him in standing up. Naruto returned to his normal voice and said, I look forward to it. Naruto Uzumaki is the winner. Most people cheered when Genma yelled. Ada boy brat, Sakura, Enko, and Kin all grinned as Zabuza shouted, pumping his fist in the air. Sasuke pondered, believing that the power should belong to an Uchiha, and what most infuriated him was when he was unable to imitate them before noticing Shiogorth at his side. The created god whispered in Sasuke's ear, you know, I like those eyes of yours, maybe I'll take those from you one day. He then tapped his cane to ensure Naruto's victory, which caused Sasuke to almost throw up. Naruto, that was really fantastic. As he rallied the group, Kiba yelled. Thanks Kiba. Naruto grinned at his friend, but the smile vanished as soon as the next name was called. Genma's call of Kiba Inuzuka versus Gaara of the Sand made Kiba and pretty much everyone else in Konoha 11 tense. Kiba became frightened and began to perspire, recalling how the Sand Nin killed a whole team of ninja on his own. Kiba gripping his shoulder, Naruto smirked before dismissing it. After saying, don't worry about me, he and Akamaru leapt to the ground, where Gaara was waiting for them. Come on, Mutt, prove my existence, said Gaara impassively as he uncorked his gourd and let sand drip out. Kiba yelled, let's get him. Akamaru, man-beast clone, as he assumed a feral stance and transformed into an exact replica of him. Fang over Fang. They both yelled as they turned into drill-like projectiles and attempted to slam into Gaara but were stopped by the sand. As they both stopped, the sand changed into a tentacle shape and knocked them both into the air. More sane floated behind them, catching them like a net before slamming them into the ground. Pathetic, Gaara said, raking the sand before slamming it back down on him when the sand returned to Gaara's feet for the third time and Kiba slowly stood up. His jacket was almost ripped off, and blood was dripping from his mouth. Kiba grinned and said, that all you got. Gaara just stared at him for a few seconds before a wave of murderous intent swept through the building. Gaara maintained his composure before his sand spilled beneath Kiba and all over the floor. When he saw that Akamaru was leaping at Gaara, he swam away, and the Kanin stopped moving on the ground. As he attempted to charge, Kiba yelled, no you bastard. He looked down and saw nothing but sand, but then a sand spike lifted him off the ground and impaled him from behind. The spike continued to carry him deeper into the area, resembling a flower that was groaning before its stems shot numerous spikes that all ran through Kiba. His middle and upper back have 2 3-foot wide ones, his left knee has a small one, his right shoulder has 2, and his collarbone has 3 tiny thorns. Kiba turned his remaining strength in Hinata's direction. The Inuzuka thought, Hinata I'm sorry, and then he let out his final breath. Kiba Kunnn is a feminine voice that bursts into the air upon seeing her deceased lover. Hinata screamed, Kiba Kuun, upon seeing her dead lover. Gaara withdrew the majority of the spikes before slung Kiba's lifeless body to the ground, causing it to slide 5 feet and leaving a deep trail of blood with the red liquid still seeping from the Inuzuka's body. Sume yelled, no, you're mine, as she and Kuromaru leapt down to the stadium, both foaming at the mouth like a crazy dog ODing on bloodlust. She charged at the sand demon, but Asuma and Kakashi appeared to stop her, and Shikaku used his shadows to seize her familiar. The final words were, let me go, he killed my son, let me kill him, let me kill ahhhghhhhhh, before Sume's bloodlust turned to grief and she started crying. Hana was in worse shape. 3 Anab were holding her while she sobbed and flailed in an attempt to break free. Karini, who was also crying a little over the loss of her student, was holding Hinata while she sobbed uncontrollably. Sume cried even more and yelled, I'll kill you, with a broken voice. Gaara's face was expressionless, but the mother gave him a cruel notion that made him practically grin. The sand demon said, I took the son, now I'll take the mother. Hana flinched and turned to face him. Gaara swung his arms forward, causing a tsunami of sand to appear. The wave followed its master's motion and threw itself at the 3 Jonin. From the departments of hell rise. Inferno was screamed by a demonic voice, and then a huge stream of fire erupted from the demonic gauntlet of the Daedric Lord of Konoha, who appeared in front of the group. Gaara halted his attack as the two forces collided and the flames soaked into the sand, turning it to glass. Gaara said monotonely, "Mother says you were like me once, but you became something more powerful. She wants your blood." When Naruto's silted eyes landed on Kiba's body, they turned purple in the shape of black oblivion and stared at Gaara. He then popped his neck on both sides, causing a loud crunch. "Tell the bitch to bring it on." Fire's rage, Naruto exclaimed, unsure of what would happen. Using the power that the missing god had given him, he sensed that the ability was calling to him, tempting him to use its power, so he had been cautious. Only the outline of Naruto's hair and armor, along with a pair of deep black eyes, were visible as flames engulfed his body. Genma said anxiously, "Hokage-sama, we need to stop this." The third person just stared at Naruto's form without responding. "My boy, Naruto, how powerful have you grown?" The third idea. As Naruto started to walk, he noticed that the ground was turning to ash with every step, and he soon started running, leaving a trail of smoke behind him. Naruto glanced at his hand through his irritated vision, and a secret smirk emerged. Gaara built a wall of sand to protect himself, but it quickly turned to glass when Naruto broke through it. Naruto vanished in a cloud of ash, then reappeared in front of the sand demon, slashing him on the right side of his face, which was instantly cartelized, leaving 4 distinctive claw marks. Naruto then kicked him into the wall and started to make a swirling motion that told everyone else to get down. "Enough!" Jinma yelled. "Winner Gaara of the sand, Naruto, stop or you will disqualify yourself from the exams." It seemed to reach Naruto's ears. After deactivating his flaming form and putting on his ninja gear, he approached Kiba's body slowly and knelt down in front of it. Naruto said, "I'll see you on the other side, bro." Kiba-kun, Hinata said as she knelt at the dead ninja's side and started to cry. Then she felt someone nudging her, and when she turned around, she saw a bloody Akamaru. Okay, he's about that size in Shippuden, since the Konoha 11 is 15/16. Hinata just gave the dog a neck hug without saying anything. With her face buried in the dog's fur, Hinata uttered, "We can overcome this together, Akamu." Genma said, "Shikamaru Nara versus Kankuro of the Sand." Shikamaru yawned and headed to the nearly destroyed area where his opponent was waiting. As a token of respect, Naruto called forth 4 Daedra to carry Kiba out of the arena before departing. After witnessing Kiba being slaughtered in such a manner, Sume and Hana were unable to walk and had to be carried out. As the crow materialized next to its master, Kankuro remarked, "You should just give up, Nara. I'm a master with my puppets." Okay, I've made Shikamaru more of a fighter as well as a thinker, so yeah, he is going get action too, Shikamaru said. "Yawn, man, this is troublesome. Let's get this over with." As 3 black clones in the outline of the lazy Nara appeared and flanked him at the same time, all 3 flicked their wrists, causing 2 demonic shadow swords to appear in both of their hands. As his puppet crow charged at the original, Kankuro yelled, "It's going to take more than some butter knives to beat me." After making a number of calculations, Shikamaru grinned and his 3 clones charged at the crow, impaling him. Kankuro then yanked his Charkora string, which caused sharp razor blades to appear over different parts of the crow. The puppet then started to spin in different directions, slicing all 3 clones into different pieces before they vanished. As he searched for his opponent, Kankuro yelled, "Where are you?" If you're interested in learning more about the Nara clan, our Shadow Jutsu is actually a very weak form of a lost chakra nature that was sealed away by the Sage of 6 Paths from the ceiling near the main light, Shikamaru remarked. "Only a select few from the Nara clan who fulfill specific requirements can unlock our true power, and I finally did it." "Shikaru, please don't. Its banishment was due to a reason." Shikaku Nara, trembling and sweating profusely, screamed, clutching the railing. Shikamaru grinned, put his hands together, and let out a series of hand sighs. The final one was special. He arched his fingers into claw-like stands before shouting. "Darkness depends on the 7th path." Every shadow in the room began to shoot out at Shikamaru as a result, absorbing into him before gradually floating to the ground in a black shell. As Kankuro gazed at the sphere in front of him, he exclaimed, "What the hell?" Shikamaru steeped out as the shell faded and cracked away. Shikamaru had undergone a mesomorph transformation. He was taller and had liner muscles. His jacket was completely black with the Nara symbol in blood red. He had a small black goatee, just like his father, and his fishnet shirt was gone, revealing his 6-pack. "Oh no," Shikamaru said. "That wasn't as troublesome as I thought it would be," and then a dark scythe materialized as he extended his hand. After a moment of nervousness, Kankuro raised his hand in surrender. Kakuro began, "Aye, Surin." Temari blushed and Kankuro became enraged when Shikamaru smirked and said, "You know, that's a nice sister you have." At a distance, Shikamaru swung his weapon downward, but it appeared to extend, slicing the puppet in half as Kankuro yelled, "You're dead," and sent the crow charging. After saying, "Ha, I wonder what else I can do," Shikamaru thrust the weapon into his shadow, causing it to reappear behind Kankuro, cutting him across the back and causing him to drop to one knee. "I surrender," was Kankuro's shout, and Shikamaru grinned and started to leave. The shout, "Winner Shikamaru Nara," came from Genma. When Temari felt something grab her ass while she was watching her brother get treated, she yelled and turned to see nothing. When she looked across the arena, she saw Shikamaru pull his hand away from the wall, which made her blush, feel a little angry, and get a little wet. As he approached his son, Shikaku was about to hit him when a shadow hand materialized behind Shikamaru. Shikaku gritted his teeth and said, "You have no idea what you've done, boy." Shikamaru, on the other hand, had a sluggish expression, but the shadow arm broke his father. Everyone was in disbelief at what was happening, and Shikamaru said, "I know exactly what I'm doing," as he looked down at his father. Tower's infirmary section as Matsuri wrapped bandages around his bare abdomen. Gaara sat at the edge of the medical bed. Matsuri is about 15 years old, just like Gaara. He grabbed her wrist before the cloth touched his 4 scars, and she was about to dab some alcohol over them after finishing mending his broken ribs when she said, "You should be more careful, Gaara." He looked directly into her eyes and asked, "Why?" With anxiety, she asked, "Why what?" In a monotone, he asked, "Why do you care about me?" For a few moments, she gave him a suspicious look. "Why don't you let anyone in?" He slowly released her wrist as she said, "Gaara, I'm not like the villagers, I'm not like your father, I won't hurt you." She then released the rag and gave him a gentle pat on the cheek. Gazing directly into her eyes, Gaara remarked, "You could easily die around me." As she kissed him and he kissed her back, she whispered lustfully, "Then I'd die happy." "Gaara?" Both of them halted their performance as a famine voice spoke. With a mistaken, "What, Temari?" Gaara turned to see Matsuri flushed. "You're occupied, but I came to check on you," Temari said, feeling uncomfortable. "Did anything significant occur?" Gaara inquired. "Kankuro lose to that Nara guy after he had transformed," she uttered while attempting to conceal the sound bleed. Before departing, Temari stated, "And the rest of the matches will be held tomorrow, because they have to repair the arena." She stopped when Gaara asked, "Has anything in the plan changed?" "No. Why will there be an invasion?" Temari inquired. With no comment, Temari walked away, "Because that's when the Uzumaki will prove my existence," Gaara said. "You do exist," Gaara the brunette said, "and I can prove it," as she got to her feet. Gaara looked her in the eye and said, "There's only one way for me to prove it." Mastari put her hands around his neck after removing her clothing. "Are you certain?" Before pushing him onto the bed, she uttered those words. The designated room for Naruto, the 3 nude bodies of Kin, Sakura, and Enko surrounded Naruto, who sighed because he was unable to sleep even though most men would have. He was saddened by Kiba's passing. There must have been something he could have done. The words, "Damn it," came out of Naruto's teeth. Melfala tried to reassure him by saying, "There was nothing you could do. His web was already woven." Without answering, Naruto simply sighed deeply before putting his arm around Sakura's nude body and allowing sleep to take hold of him. It was the 3rd and last day of the 3rd stage, and Naruto watched with mild interest as Sasuke beat the nin who was sucking his chakra out. Although the majority of the damage had been fixed, some people were still uncomfortable because of the bloodstains on the ground. When Genma announced Sakura Harino versus Ino Yamanaka, Ino smirked and sighed, and she jumped onto the arena while Ino descended the stairs. "Give up, forehead, you can't be," Ino started but was interrupted by a chakra arrow zooming past her head and destroyed the wall behind her. "You could have killed me," Ino yelled. Sakura said in a lethal whisper, "That's the point," and then she pulled back another arrow and let it fly. Ino rolled to the side, hoping to dodge it, but the projectile exploded, sending the blonde flying through the air. Sakura swiftly followed her, kicked the girl in the back and into the ground, and landed gracefully on the tip of the hand sign statue before preparing another arrow with surprisingly quick reflexes. Ino lowered herself to one knee, pointed her hands at Sakura, and used her clan's jutsu. "Mind transfer technique," she yelled, and she was now in what appeared to be a forest with a blood-red moon shining. "Welcome to my hunting grounds," Inner Sakura said as her eyes became golden, Slowly the girl shifted into her lycanthrope form, her true inner self. Ino screamed as the beast pounced on her and quickly came back to her own body. The second she opened her eyes, Sakura let loose another arrow, this time as she took it in the knee. Ha 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 yeah. When she looked up, she saw Sakura knee next to her, placing a dagger to her neck. A ghhh. The blonde screamed, clutching her now bleeding leg. With a deadly whisper, she said, "Surrender or die." Ino shakily raised her hand, ending the match, and Sakura snatched the arrow and tore it out, causing Ino to cry out in pain once more before returning to the stands. Naruto whispered in her ear, "Has anybody ever told you that you look amazing covered in blood?" And then proceeded to lick the drum, making Sakura shiver with pleasure in response. She inched her hand up his inner thigh, causing a certain anatomy to twitch. "Are you two going to have sex in front of everyone?" Enko asked in jest. Enko smirked and walked over to them as Naruto looked up, hadn't thought about it yet, before going back to his earlier action. She whispered to Sakura, "You better not leave me out, got it?" and gave her a gentle, mesmerizing rub. "Would we ever, Enko-chan?" Naruto grinned and mimicked Enko's gesture with his free hand, causing a small groan. Naruto said, "Well, finish this later, I got a go," before vanishing into a red mist and causing both females to collapse. Damn right later, they thought simultaneously. Hokage officia right now with family members waiting for him. Naruto showed up outside of Sarutobi's office. Kun Naruto. The third Hokage, Ibiki, Kakashi, and a middle-aged man with white spiky hair that reached his mid-back went inside after Kin released her grip and jumped into the red-headed boy's arms, receiving a smirk. "Yes, this is the girl you mentioned." Naruto Sarutobi smiled a little as he spoke. "This is Kin Tsuchi, yep." Grams everyone's eyes widened at that last line. "Formerly of the Sound Village, Orochimaru's bodyguard, and now under my protection, and possibly a part of my CRA." Sweating bullets, Kakashi said. "CCRA? I am the last of two clans, yes, Namazaki and Uzumaki, yes. I am aware that he was my father, Prince of Schemes. You can thank Boethia for that." Naruto smiled and turned to face the middle-aged man. "Oh, and speaking of Godfather," Naruto began firmly. The man began to smile, but his eyes widened as Naruto shoved Merun's razor into his lower abdomen, making sure to keep him alive while avoiding anything crucial. "Where in hell were you?" As he twisted the razor steadily, small leaks of blood poured out of the man's mouth, and his eyes burned with rage, Naruto said, pressing the blade deeper, forcing the sage to back agents against the wall. "Where were you when the mobs arrived, when I was thrown into the streets, when I was on the verge of death, and when they killed me? When I needed you, where were you?" On the other side of the room, Kin, Kakashi, Sarutobi, and Ibiki were all intimidated by the scene in front of them, but it had to happen. It had to happen. Jiraiya gritted his teeth and grabbed Naruto's arm in an attempt to stop his onslaught. Naruto screamed in a deranged voice, grasping the man's neck with his left hand and repeatedly slamming him against the wall with his right hand before softening and pulling the blade upward. "All right." Naruto slammed Jiraiya again before saying this. The elderly man stammered, "I was serving Konoha," and Naruto gave him another painful slam. "Serving Konoha, huh? So your own godson was not as important as Konoha?" After shouting, Naruto carefully removed the razor and flung the man to the center of the floor. Jiraiya raised his hand and said, "Naruto, wait, I'm sorry," but Naruto snapped it in half. "Konoha made my life extremely difficult, and if it weren't for a few locals, I would have let the Daedra enter oblivion and destroyed everything you attempted to help." With a shout, Naruto unleashed his power and kicked his godfather across the face, causing him to crash into the wall. "Don't kill him, Naruto. He's not totally to blame." Sarutobi put a hand on Naruto to calm him down a little. "The council went behind my back and sent as well as keep him away from this place," he said. "This is a village for ninjas. Damn it. I'm sick of civilians. Why do they even have any authority?" At the end, Naruto grinned and remarked, "I believe it's time to reap what they have sown." The Hokage gave the order, "Crow, get Jiraiya to the hospital." Anbu in a crow mask materialized, carried the sage over his shoulder, and vanished into a cloud of smoke. The Hokage respectfully stated, "Now, you will be given citizenship in Konoha in exchange for your corporation." With a smile, Kin explained Orochimaru's invasion plans and his intentions towards Sasuke Uchiha. Dagon and the other princes agreed, saying in Naruto's mind, "I say we kill the Uchiha. He's become a liability and has outlived his usefulness." "Ibiki, how much has Kabuto sacrificed thus far?" Naruto questioned the frightened man. Ibiki's plan faced statement, Well, I'll say this for him. He's got a high pain tolerance, but he broke after we cut his left arm off, as well as his ears, and noise caused Naruto to laugh uncontrollably. The majority of the audience stiffened when Naruto said, "Ha ha 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 ha, oh, I needed that. Oh, and one more thing. There's another Daedric prince coming, maybe two this time." When? Kakashi inquired, recalling the chaos Malakath had wreaked at the bridge. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, "Maybe during the invasion, I'm not entirely sure." Naruto said, "Also Gramps, we need to start 2 guilds, which caused confusion among the other members." "What are guilds, Naruto? What do you mean?" Sarutobi inquired. "For mages, thieves, warriors, and assassins, a guild is a kind of fraternity. I want to start a guild of underground thieves and enlist anyone I want in addition to a dark brotherhood," Naruto clarified. "What would they be used for?" Kakashi inquired. "1, spread my influence. 2, bring a little bank to Konoha that could help prepare for the invasion," Naruto replied. "What does spread your influence mean to you?" the third inquired. "Luck and thieves are patronized by the Nocturnal. I am the patroness of thieves because she is inside of me. Making a guild would attract thieves who would worship me, greatly enhancing my strength," Naruto explained. "Additionally, the Dark Brotherhood is a cult of assassins who adhere to Scythus methods. My client while impressing the others," Naruto stated, "by praying to the Night Mother, who must be established. She will inform the listener, who will broker the contract, funds are exchanged, and a skilled assassin is sent to kill the target." Sarutobi remarked, "Very well, Naruto, this could greatly benefit the village." However, Naruto raised one finger in response. Naruto piqued their curiosity by saying, one condition." Naruto stated, "I want to liquefy the civilian council," revealing his murderous intent. After a brief period of silence, Sarutobi sighed deeply and lit up his pipe. "Very well, after they are dealt with I will reinstate them, giving the power to the shinobis." After giving a sadistic smile, Naruto put his arm around his kin's waist and vanished through a shadowy portal. Miles away from Konoha right now, both Naruto and Kin came out of the shadowy portal into the dense forest that encircled Konoha. "What are we doing here, Naruto-kun?" Kin inquired as Naruto grinned. Naruto said in a way that confused his relatives, "We're going to my home." "However, your flat is in the village?" Getting a chuckle from Naruto, Kin said. "You didn't realize that was my actual home, did you, my dear sweet Kin? In Oblivion, Naive has a better place." As he slid his palm and pointed his hand upward, a normal-sized Oblivion gate materialized from the ground. Naruto smiled and beckoned her to enter the portal, which she did. Ignorance. When Kin realized where they had entered, her eye leapt out of her head. She was now standing on a dark volcanic glass bridge with a wall composed of the same material that had served as their entrance, and the surrounding area was covered in lava lakes that were scorched and on fire. There were 9 more gates along the walkway that were always open, but each one had a crow, a wolf, or a piece of chess on top. Guess who? Beyond the gates, however, was a dark tower with an ominous red light emanating from the top of the hill. A large stone statue of a 9-tailed fox with the Oblivion sign engraved on its forehead stood at the base of the entrance, and as they passed the gate entrance into the courtyard, a number of Daedric guards bowed to Naruto and his kin before returning to their duties. They soon reached a tall door that slowly opened, revealing a pool of lava from which the beam emerged in a spiraling stairs. Beside it, Naruto and his kin walked straight to the top, exiting through a balcony and onto a portal that took them the rest of the way. Kin glanced around what appeared to be Naruto's room on the top floor of the tower. The floor was made of flesh, and around the base were various doors for weapons, armor, magic, jutsu, and other arsenals. Naruto took Kin's hand and they went up the bone stairs to the master bedroom, which had a huge bed with red, silky sheets and shards of bone around the bases. Along the walls were trophies, including some skulls, spines, and even a few eyes. As he unzipped his jacket and lay down on the bed, Naruto grinned and said, "So how do you like my little slice of hell?" Kin grinned and used him as a pillow. "It looks good. Do you have any food nearby?" Kin inquired, and then Naruto threw her over so that he was inches from her ear, close enough for her to feel his breath. Before she could react, Naruto tore off her pants and thrust her into her, but she wasn't complaining. "I could eat you all night if that's what you mean," he said in a demonic voice as the sudden surge of hormones overtook his senses. Skyhaven Temple in Skyrim. A man wearing bone armor made from his kills, the dragons, sat in the enormous room of the Skyhaven Temple that housed Alduin's wall. He was currently sharpening his enormous 3-foot-wide sword, which was entirely made of bone, when a recruit wearing blade armor approached him with trepidation. When the man looked at him, the jealous boy began, "Uma," and flinched. "Uma Dova Kanarina." The man smirked at his new nickname, which he had changed from Dovahkiin to Dovahkiinaran, Dragon Slayer. Yes, the man said in a deep voice, making the boy tremble. The boy shakily said, "We have received a message from Talos." The Nord, who was 6 feet 5 inches tall, had good muscle mass, dark spiked hair, unusual for his race, a short goatee, and a talon scare from Alduin in their fabled battle, stood up, sheathed his massive blade across his back, and stepped into the light. What is meant by this? Knowing that it would frighten the recruit, he asked with a smile. It says to prepare an army for war, the recruit said, causing the Nord to smile sadistically. Get the Akavir ready. The Dovahkiinaran's laughter reverberated throughout the Skyhaven fortress as she exclaimed, "Ha ha ha, we going to war, ha 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 ha." Alduin's red eyes snapped open in the Netherigen where the firstborn rested. "So it begins." Sarutobi closed his eyes and let out a long sigh, staring at the council of civilians who had made his grandson's life a living hell and who didn't seem to regret it. Knowing what was hidden there, he looked up at the dark ceiling and said, "They don't even know what's coming." "Why are we here, Hokage-sama?" a chubby member of the Merchants Guild said. Sarutobi remained silent and merely moved aside to reveal a pair of deep red eyes. The figure emerged from the shadows, resembling Naruto Uzumaki, but dressed differently. He was wearing combat boots, black baggy pants with his dwarven gun holstered at the side, and a deep crimson two-tailed trench coat that was open down the middle, revealing his toned abdomen. Basically, Dante from Devil May Cry 3 doesn't own ether. "Demon, what do you want?" the fat man shouted, but Nato's death hand quickly reduced him to bones. "Are there going to be any more disruptions?" "No, now. I only have one question for you avaricious bastards. Do you feel bad about what you did to me?" Naruto inquired. "No, the only thing we regret is not being able to accomplish more before those jerks gave you power." Danzo and Kaharu agreed as Hormora yelled at the top of her lunges. Before anyone could react, Naruto snapped his fingers, causing dark figures to fall from the ceiling and slaughter the people. The two old advisors were the first to perish, but Danzo and two Root Nin had their backs to the wall, and Danzo sneered at his former teammate. Naruto laughed darkly, "Then I won't have any regrets for what I'm about to do to you." "Sarutobi, is this how far you've fallen? Putting yourself in the hands of the demons?" he shouted, then realized that these figures were far more skilled than your average ninja. He watched in horror as one of them slashed his Root Nin's neck, then skillfully threw the dagger he was using into the other nin before retrieving it and facing the old war hawk. The person was wearing a skin-tight full bodysuit and a mask that was black as night, with invisible eyes. "Hold on," Danzo begged, "come serve me, and I'll give you great power." The man cocked his head to the side. He responded, "I serve Sai this," and then threw his knife, which got stuck in his Adon's apple. The old man did not die, but instead collapsed on his hands and knees, trying to stop the bleeding with one hand as he saw a pair of combat boots come up and coughed up more blood. Naruto summoned the ebony blade and whispered in Danzo's ear, "Crawl." The elderly man obeyed and started to crawl, but collapsed when Naruto severed his right leg at the knee. Naruto grinned as he looked down at the man who had no insect in front of him, just waiting to be crushed. "Crawl, I said," he shouted. After a few more seconds, Danzo started over, and then Naruto severed his other leg, causing him to scream in agony. After saying, "Hurts doesn't it? This is a small taste of what I went through. Hee now reap what you've sown." He impaled the sword in the middle of his back, pinning him to the ground. He then moved slowly in front of him, grasped the top of his head, and yanked him upward and off the ground, holding him in midair with his organs spilling out. He then threw the corpse to the floor, where two scamps were waiting to devour him. "Death!" From a seat holding a box of popcorn, Shegoroth yelled. Naruto said, "Blade, I know I enjoyed it." He thrust the ebony blade forward, removing the majority of the blood before it vanished in a cloud of red mist. Nocturnal purred from his mindscape, "You've gotten your revenge. Good Naruto, I'll have to make this day much more sweeter later." Naruto grinned and said, "I'll hold that to you." He then turned to face the elderly Hokage. He said, "Hey old man, how the fights turn out at the exams?" Well, Neji won agents Hinata since she was emotionally unstable to fight. Shikamaru advanced as well as Choji winning agents Shinogara and Tamari also advanced along with Sasuke, Sakura and Kabuto. The elderly Kage clarified. He pondered who he was facing and asked, "What are the matchups look like?" Sarutobi told Naruto, who grinned, "You will fight Sasuke and Gaara against the winner of that match. Shikamaru versus Tamari. Sakura versus Kabuto. Choji versus Neji." Naruto remarked, "Sounds good to me." He was preparing to eliminate the final Uchiha. Knowing the answer, Sarutobi asked, "You're going to kill him, aren't you?" "Oh yeah, Not because of anything personal, well, he is a prick, but with the council liquefied it'd be like rubbing salt into a bleeding wound, Naruto said, his sadistic smirk turning into a smile. Sarutobi couldn't help but be impressed by the way the boy had planned it. He cocked his head to watch the group of black-clad assassins slowly disappear into the shadows, with the exception of one who came forward, took off his mask, and revealed a man with red eyes, visible fangs, hollowed-out cheeks, and brown hair pulled back into a ponytail. With a regal assent, the man said, "Well, I can say that is the most fun I had since, well, I died." Naruto gave him a bag of yen, which is the closest thing to gold, and said, "Glad you and your family enjoyed yourselves, Vicente." Before Shiagorath appeared beside him, the old vampire said, "I'm surprised that our Lord Scythus fished every one of us out of the void, but I'm pleased me and my family have another opportunity at life. Ha ha ha. Stop by the sanctuary anytime. It would be an honor to host the prodigy of Scythus." The vampire took a moment to sniff the air before narrowing his eyes. "You smell like the person who killed our family," the vampire remarked, glancing at the insane deity. "Yes, Vicente, we used to be brothers, but that was a long time ago with some remorse," he said. "All I can offer is my apology. At the time we were all deceived." Naruto was somewhat taken aback by how mortal the Daedra prince was being correct. "Once you realize that he was mortal," Dagon remarked with amusement. Naruto reflected. He said that but never really went into detail. Dagon roared with laughter as he said, "He stopped my planes from being invaded Nern before he became a Daedra. Ha ha ha. When I found out he was the new mad god, I went to the Isles and challenged him to a duel." The laughter stopped when Naruto asked, "Who won?" Dagon said, "Shut up, brat," and disconnected. Naruto made a note to continue doing business with the Brotherhood in the future, and Vicente gave Shiagorath a forgiving nod before disappearing back into the shadows. Drawing Naruto's attention, Sarutobi said, "I know you might not want it, but your godfather wants to help you prepare for the exams. Why should I accept his assistance when he offers it now, when I don't need it?" Naruto said in a furious tone. Sarutobi squinted. "Jiraiya, you idiot, how could you take these Baka's words so lightly?" After giving it some thought, the elderly man put both hands on the boy's shoulders and met his gaze. "Naruto, he was not entirely at fault when he returned. I informed him on all that had happened these past 10 years and he flew into a rage knowing what the council done to you and how they manipulated him into staying away from the village. Naruto, I am old and may not make it another 10 years. That is a hard fact to accept, but a fact nonetheless. Please at least try to kindle a relationship between the two of you, if not for yourself, for me then," Sarutobi said with heartfelt words that seemed to hit home for Naruto. The elderly man grinned and gave him a hug after he briefly narrowed his eyes and nodded his head. The elderly Kage said, "Thank you, Naruto." The hot spring at Konoha. This was where Naruto and Jiraiya were supposed to meet, so he grunted innocently. There was no sign of the Todd Hermit anywhere he looked. "Where's that son of a?" When Naruto heard a perverted giggle, he looked around but saw no one. "Hey, where the foo? Hehehe." The sound interrupted him once more, and a tic started to form on his forehead. "Damn it, make that sound one more ti." Now completely enraged, Naruto started to pace the area until he spotted a trio with a white ponytail with spikes coming from the top. He approached, grabbed the tail, and then yelled while maintaining a composed bowel movement. "Get the fuck down here," and threw the pervert, who was using binoculars and writing on a notepad, to the ground. He said, "Umahai," before Naruto gave him a death glare. Naruto crossed his arms and said, "Get your ass up, you've got 5 seconds to prepare me for the exams." Jiraiya held up his hand and said, "Look kid, I can't say anything to make amends for not being here, but what I can do is make amends by being here now, and I have something for you." After a moment, chakra started to swirl in his palm, and soon he had a whole sphere of grinding energy in his hand. Naruto's expression was one of amusement. Naruto said, "Cool now, how is this for me exactly?" Which made the hermit smile. Jiraiya asked, "Well, you know who your father was, correct?" And Naruto nodded. He grinned and said, "Well, this was his signature jutsu, the Rasengan. This is just the base form, but once you get the hang of it, you can add your chakra elements and whatever else power you have up your sleeve and bam, one kick-ass move." Naruto grinned back and followed the hermit's instructions, but an hour later, a perfect sphere of energy was spiraling in one of his hands. Jiraiya's mouth dropped open in sheer surprise. The man's face twitched as he said, how that's impossible." To stay focused, Naruto used his other hand to open his revolver's ammo cartridge, held the Rasengan close to it, and quickly absorbed it into the empty holes. He flicked it shut, grinning at the outcome, and then fired a round into a far-off wall. The mini Rasengan struck the wall, slowly grinding into it before pushing through and creating a spiral effect resembling a black hole before exploding. sending the rest of the wall skyward. Naruto grinned broadly, put his gun in his holster, and faced his godfather. He said, "You know you might not be so bad after all." Jiraiya opened his arms in anticipation of an embrace, but he was taken aback. Naruto said, "But you're not off the hook yet," and left the scene. He counted as he passed a tub, took a few more steps before stopping, and then turned around to see that the tube was not empty. In the tube, Sheogorath was bare-chested and holding two very pretty young ladies in his arms. Sheogorath grinned and said, "Top of the morning to ya lad." The girl on his right laughed and then planted a kiss on his cheek. Before her top sank to the water, she smirked and said, in an innocent voice, "That accent is so cut suddenly. This swimsuit feels so tight." Naruto laughed and turned to leave. "So tell me Ladieza, what do ya know about cheese?" The Konoha ashes of Ichiraku's streets. Naruto closed his eyes and blinked, revealing the charred remnants of his once favorite grocery store. The thought of what had happened to those two, the elderly man having to watch as they raped his daughter, having his eyes severed, and then being burned, Olivia, made him clench his fist in rage. When he opened his eyes, he saw Sakura grinning sweetly at him after feeling a hand wrap around his shoulder. In an attempt to console him, she said, "I miss them." To Naruto, he had a very human heart, even though he was a demonic god king. "I know it just," he heard someone shout, "Die you abomination," and assumed it was just another fanatic seeking small-time retribution. Naruto screamed, "Look, if you want to die so bad, come on," but realized that his hatred was for Sakura rather than him. The man, who was dressed in loose robes with a breastplate on his chest and a headband with a horn that was leaking a liquid that I couldn't really identify, yelled, "You are a sinful creature and an abomination that must be wiped from existence as Stendar commands." Sakura drew her hunting knives and asked, "What?" He began, "I can see it in your eyes, child of Hersen, you prey upon the weak, and Stendar, give me strength, I will kill," but was interrupted when Zabuza materialized behind him, ripped off his bandages, and bit deeply into the side of his neck before tearing off his head entirely. "These guys need salt," he spat out his head in disgust. Sakura said, "Zabuza? What's going on?" to the vampire. "I don't know, a group of them attacked me and they talked about a werewolf, so here I am," he clarified. "Damn it, more of Nern in crossing over. These guys are vigilantes, a fanatical group who have a self-righteous mission to destroy Daedra, werewolves, vampires and others that basically concerns all of us," Naruto said as Mora gave him the data. Zabuza said, irritated, "Oh great." Sakura nodded after squinting her eyes. Naruto teleported away with Zabuza leaping into the air after saying, "Let go before people start getting curious," and then he put his arm around Sakura's waist. "Aga aha gods, don't stop," was Sakura's groan as Naruto thrust into her. She arched her back and let out another long moan before flipping him over and putting him underneath her as she fiercely rode him. Naruto leapt up and clamped his mouth down on the bend of her neck. She then pushed him back onto the bed after grinding her wolf-like claws into his back. Their breathing grew increasingly labored until Naruto let go into her damp folds, causing her to climax as well and collapse onto him in a puddle of sweat. She giggled and nestled her face against Naruto's chest as he warped his arm around her damp body, saying, "Killing 1 second then fucking the next, oh yeah, this was a good day." She traced her finger over his chest and said, "If I would have known that blood got you all worked up, we could be doing this every day." She raised an eyebrow and brought her face closer to his as he smirked and said, "I just think a woman looks her best covered in blood." She teased, "Oh really Sue, that's what get you going, huh?" before kissing him and tracing it down his neck and chest before vanishing under the sheets. A few moments later, Naruto stabbed him in the head back due to the sudden surge of intensity that overtook his body. Before letting go, he said, "Oh man Sakura, I'm gonna," but she drew her mouth away and returned to his chest, both of them wearing contented expressions. "Naruto," she began in a low voice. "Yeah Sakura?" he inquired, observing her distressed expression and cupping her cheek. "Do you love me?" she asked, and after giving it some thought, Naruto grinned. Before his head began to hurt, he said, "Yeah I think I do, you, Anko, and Kin." To the Daedra in his head, he said, "I love you to Nocturnal." Sakura grinned and got out of bed, admiring her hourglass figure thanks to lichen transformations. While sitting up, Naruto asked, "And where are you going?" After putting on her armor, Sakura approached him and gave him a full-faced kiss. Before leaving the apartment, she teased, "The forest to train, I might be covered in blood when I get back." Naruto looked at his clock, grinned, and then collapsed back onto his bed with a sigh. The exam is tomorrow, and if the information Kin provided us is accurate, then the invasion is as well, he thought. Naruto grunted when Hersen said, "Don't forget the Daedric princes that are coming, Naruto." Her scene is still with me, Naruto reflected to the hunter. Have you given the impending conflict any thought? Dagon said. Yes, Naruto admitted to the prince, I'm not even sure what will happen after we get enough allies or even if we win. Easy, said Pirate, we'll invade the Divan domain and murder them all. Naruto said out loud, I was hoping you would say that. He then closed his eyes and fell asleep. The mindscape of Naruto remarked, where the hell am I now? As he looked out over a valley that had been ravaged by battle, the earth was scorched by fire, and the sky was blood red with ash falling from the sky. When he looked more closely, he saw shockwaves of energy emanating from a hybrid that resembled a humanoid with horns wielding a spiked demonic mace. In the center of the valley were two clashing forms surrounded by an army of various Daedra varieties. Molig? Naruto asked before focusing on his adversary, a green giant using a massive hammer for welding. Nato exclaimed incredulously, Malakath? No way, I killed him. Nocturnal placed her head on his shoulder and uttered, you did kill him, this was the last battle before we were sealed. Just watch, she reassured, fight them, you betray them. Malakath pushed his weapon agents Moligs and said, haha, not bad brother, but after today there will only be one corner in the house of trouble. Molig sneered, damn you. You and the others betrayed us, then allied yourselves with the enemy, before kicking the Daedric prince in the stomach and striking him overhead. Malakath sidestepped and struck Bal in the side with the hammer, but he locked his hand onto its base just as the mace struck the side of Malakathi's head, sending him hurtling across the valley into a mountain. His eyes widened. A swarm of knights of order rushed in before Molig could follow up. He sneered and lifted his arm to attack, but the knights transformed into sweet rolls. Sheogorath leapt overhead and struck a knight behind Malaj with a Daedric sword, saying, top of the morning to ya. Mad God! Exclaimed a high-pitched voice from behind a horde of knights who split apart in disgust at a massive sword-wielding crystal warrior. Shio uttered, oh bloody hell, just before Jigalag lunged towards him with a smile on his face. Sheogorath slashed his sword into the ground, called forth the Spear of Bitter Mercy, and hurled it, striking the Daedric of Order in the shoulder, slowing but not killing him with a sigh. Sheogorath retrieved his sword and charged at him, ready to fight. Molig was about to charge when a giant hound grabbed hold of the back of his neck. A man in a loose toga and a masquerade was laughing nearby while wielding a battle axe with twin wolves engraved on it. All of a sudden, he turned and used his momentum to swing the axe at a slender man who had a deer skull for a head. The man blocked the spear. Herson turned to the right and knocked Clavicus forward by slamming the spear hilt into the back of his helmet. Vile rolled over and caught the spear with his hand as Herson stood over his body, thrusting forward with his spear raised overhead. However, Herson was stronger, and the spear tip slid into his arm, exited, and then entered Vile's shoulder, causing him to scream. Vile's arm went limp as Herson twisted the weapon and violently withdrew it. He then reached down and removed the mask, revealing his face with the blood-dripping tip at his neck. Herson withdrew. A female voice yelled, Hunter! Herson stumbled back and used the spear to maintain his position as he turned around and released a burst of energy from his chest. Herson wheezed, Azora, as the Queen of Dawn and Dusk flouted down, a stream of smoke emanating from her star. Vile bowed mockingly and picked up his axe after saying, thank you, my lady. She frowned and said, make it quick, the battle is still raging. The hunter was brought to his knees by Vile's kick that came out from under him after he walked behind the Herson with his head tilted, pulling the rueful axe back into a swinging position. He placed it at the base of his neck. Herson shouted, a hunter may die but the hunt goes on, just before the axe cut off his head and the rest of his bodies. Vile put the axe on his shoulder and said, let's go, Azura. With 5 arms arched behind her and one holding the ebony blade, she turned and rebuked Mafala, saying, we are not yet done. Her eyes narrowed dangerously as she saw Herson's severed head. Vile ground and moved forward, pulling the axe, but a huge crow snatched him up and took off for another area of the field before he could get close. Azura pushed her star forward and directed several energy beams at the web spinner, who was within range of her blade, and gracefully dodged them in order to avoid the blow. Azura cartwheeled backward. She then drew a crescent moon and threw it like a boomerang, severing 2 of her arms. Despite this, she pretended not to be hurt and kept moving forward, swinging her reaming arms. Azura threw the crescent at her once more, cutting off another arm, but she had time to catch up. As the web spinner thrust the ebony blade into Azura's shoulder and tore at her body, spewing godly blood onto the ground, she let out a scream. Melfala narrowed her eyes, lifted her by the head with 2 of her arms, and pressed the ebony blade against her neck as Azura slowly crawled away in an attempt to flee. She grinned after glancing over her shoulder and into Mafala's black eyes. When Mafala turned, she saw a woman with a staff bearing a skull on top. Dressed in smooth black robes, the web spinner charged Vermina after tossing the Queen of Dusk to the ground. The Daedric Lord of Nightmares gave the web spinner a sly smile before charging at her with her staff and striking her with a bolt that depleted her energy but did not stop her entirely. Vermina snarled and shot another bolt, but this time, Mephala ducked and kept running toward her after bringing the blade overhead and coming within striking range. She was struck in the back by a burst of light. Mephala looked over and saw Azura with the star in her hand. Then, before a charged bolt struck her in the face, she turned to see only Vermina's staff skull. A bloody Azura joined Vermina as she grinned at the smoldering body. Vermina asked, glancing at her form, looking worse for her sister? Gazing at the field of devastation surrounding them, Azura remarked, pay it no mind, we still have a battle to fight. Before Azura could respond, a massive mass of tentacles wrapped around the two of them and lifted them both into the air. How many are left? Azura asked her fellow Daedric. Fools! You will pay for these intrusions. A vengeful voice yelled from above as both Daedrics were restrained. A woman with an angle, dressed in robes, pointed a glowing blade at the sun and said, bath in the holy light. Rays of the weapon blazed at the dark abyss, causing it to roar in agony and relieving the two women. The Daedric of Order fell to his back as Sheogorath, below, sidestepped backwards, thrust the blade into his crystal abdomen, grabbed the great sword, yanked it from his grasp, and then slashed him across the chest with it after blocking another powerful blow from Jiggalag. Sheogorath raised his hand and called forth the gatekeeper. Tossing the blade to the ground, the keeper attacked the grounded prince as soon as the mad god pointed to his opponent, repeatedly striking his face with its mace hand. As Jiggalag's face began to crumble, he frantically reached for his sword, grasped its hilt, and impaled the gatekeeper from below, making it roar in agony. Jiggalag got up fast and cut off his left arm before severing his right with a loud thud. He let it fall to the ground after grabbing the chain from its helmet and sliding his blade through it. Sheogorath positioned the Wabbajack for another shot and said, mate, you need to know when to stay dead. He then turned on his heel and fired at Sanguine, who was grinning and had his own staff ready, but it disappeared when a massive green dragon caught him in its talons. When Sheogorath turned around, he saw that Jiggalag's sword was piercing his chest. Now that we're Alwana, he said. He started coughing up blood and laughing. He said, you really shouldn't have done that. He enjoy the view, before snapping his finger, causing both to appear high above the battlefield before falling to the ground. Periite roared back up, racing across the gloomy sky. Sanguine said in a dull voice, how long you gonna keep me like this? The dragon snarled, nosedived toward the ground, and lowered the Daedra, causing him to slide violently across the ground before taking off higher into the sky. Sanguine's shout infuriated Periite, saying, now that wasn't very nice. What's wrong, Periite? The big bad dragon afraid of a fight? Taking advantage of the situation, Sanguine stabbed his foot, causing his grip to loosen, and started to ascend his ankle. Sanguine was now on his back as Periite flailed in the air. He clutched his rose and released 5 energy bursts, calling forth 5 Daedrics that were spread out across his body. He shouted, hack him up, boys, and the dragon roared in pain before collapsing to the ground as the Dremora stabbed him in the body with their sword. When Periite whimpered and was unable to raise his bloody head, he saw the Prince of Sin standing tall and wielding a sword. He thrust the weapon into the dragon's head without saying anything. Sanguine called forth a bottle of medicine and inhaled its scent. He said, mead. However, a huge black axe buried itself in his back, causing him to fall forward before he could take a sip. A woman wearing back battle armor, which exposed her stomach but covered her breasts, was standing behind the body. Boethia approached him and tore it from his body. She squinted as she surveyed her surroundings. Boethia exclaimed, Namira, stop hiding, it's disgraceful. She then burst out laughing. Playfully, she held her ring and said, oh, you found me. With a growl, Boethia aimed her weapon at her. She yelled, fight me, but Namira waved a finger at her. Now sister, brother, whatever. If I fight you, I'll most likely die, but if I fight you on my terms you will die, she said while laughing. She shouted, come and try it, and one of the Q Namira vanished into thin air. Boethia squinted and moved cautiously, listening for any sounds. She brought the axe around and hit nothing after something taped her shoulder. Spinning on her heel, she grunted in agony when a sharp object slashed her across the back, spinning her around and hitting nothing again. Boethia growled and then slammed her axe into the ground, creating a huge shockwave that was followed by a thud. A metal boot stomped on Nimira's hand, making a crunching sound as she reached for her ring that had been knocked off her hand. She glanced up at Boethia, who was wearing a sickly smile. Namira began, sister, but Boethiah's hand tightened around her neck, lifting her into the air with a sly smile. Boethiah repeatedly struck her face with her fist. Boethiah struck her once more with an uppercut, then savagely head-butted the Daedra while clasping her head in both hands. After a few moments, she let her drop to her knees and kicked her hard in the chest, knocking Nameera onto her back. After saying, "How cruel of you, Boethiah," Malakath swung his hammer at her, turning her back a few feet. Boethiah got up furiously, pulled her axe from the ground, and charged at Malakath. With a smile on his face, the Prince of Curses struck Volundruj with the massive axe, causing sparks to fly. Then, he sidestepped and struck Boethiah in the back, causing her to stagger forward. She twisted her body violently, then released her axe just in time to lodge it in Malakath's side. With a painful grunt, the Daedric withdrew it and tossed it far away. Boethiah squinted, popped her knuckles, and lunged at him again. After she ducked under his full swing, he launched a barrage of blows that caused his body to tremble. After continuing her attack with 2 strong kicks to each side of the abdomen, Boethiah delivered an uppercut that sent him flying and knocked his hammer from his hands. With a growl, Malakath rose from the earth. This time, Boethiah jumped and charged him once more before landing behind him and giving him a forceful elbow to the back that sent him sliding across the floor. He recovered quickly and charged her, his whole body exploding with anger. As she was about to retaliate, he threw his arms wide, tackled her in the lower abdomen, and ran alongside her for a brief moment before body slamming her to the ground. After that, he saddled her in the stomach and swung a volley of powerful fists, each of which made a crunching noise. After a few minutes of doing this, he stood up and grasped Boethiah's head. Malakath said, "Time to die, bitch." Then Boethiah spat in his face, causing him to growl. He walked behind her and put his hands around her neck and chin. After letting her head drop and allowing her to fall to his knees, Boethiah fell face first to the ground after a strong yank and a loud snapping sound from her spine. Nameera hobbled to his side and said, "Thank you." Nameera nodded as Malakath stated with seriousness, "Dagon's the only one left and he's going to be the most troublesome." Before a massive Daedric gate emerged from the earth with its red beam glowing, the ground began to tremble violently. "Here he comes." Malakath gripped the hammer tighter, holding Volundruj at the ready. He turned to see his other family members congregating next to him. Holding Dawnbreaker in her hand, Merida exclaimed, "The Prince of Destruction will fall today. We shall bring him to his knees and take our rightful place," as she shot into the air. An army of Dremora rushed out of the gate as a thunderous voice yelled, "Ah-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h." 4 enormous hands gripped the outer sides of the gate and pulled the remaining members of the God of Destruction through, battle axe and wrist blades ready. Dagon clenched his fanged teeth and roared loudly before swinging his ace down with his claw. Swiping at the opposite side, he growled out, looking down at his smaller kin. The Daedrics dispersed to evade the enormous blow, but Malakath leapt onto the axe, hung on by the handle, and ascended the enormous weapon's shaft gradually. Dagon was momentarily stunned when Vermina fired a charged bolt that struck him in the side of the head. He then raised his big leg and slammed it down at her form, but she swiftly teleported before it could reach her as Jiglage sank his sword into his shoulder muscle. Dagon growled and spun around, causing the sword and its master to slide down his chest, where he grabbed his body and tightly squeezed. With great effort, Jiglage wriggled his crushed hand out and thrust it into Dagon's, but a trail of crystals covered his lower arm, forcing him to drop the Daedria. Prince of Order, Jiglage cried out as his insides started to crack with a powerful swing. Malakath grabbed Dagon's hand and slammed a Volundrug into his knuckle, forcing his arm to sling back and sending Malakath to the ground below. Merida shouted, "Perish in the holy light," as she hovered above his head, holding Dawnbreaker toward the sun. The rays of the breaker shone into Dagon's chest through the blackened sky, causing him to scream in agony and fall back onto the portal, kicking up a lot of dust. Merida landed where her relatives had gathered, on the edge of the dust. Malakath tensed and tightened his hold on his hammer as Val exclaimed, "Did we kill him? Did we win?" Before the sounds of heavy footsteps could be heard, he said, "No, we just made him angry." Shortly after, Dagon emerged from the smoke, no longer in his colossi form, with a bright scar on his chest and broken crystals on his arm. For a moment, Dagon gazed at his brothers. Vile became agitated and charged him. As he got close to Dagon, he wrapped his arm around his face, used his other arms to drag him into the air, slammed him onto his knee, and threw him like a fury doll. Dagon took the initiative this time and advanced slowly while accelerating. The closest, Nameera, charged him, but 2 of his arms knocked her away. Now jogging, Dagon spun around with his axe in his upper right hand, striking Azura and Vermina, causing them to slide across the floor. Both Jigalag and Malakath defended their positions, and at the same time, they crossed blades with Dagon, who grinned and slammed his extra arms into the guts, impaling them into the air before slinging them away. The Daedra reached around and grabbed him by the limbs before pulling violently before 4 popping noises were heard and he was flung at Marita's side. Sanguine had lashed himself to the dragon's back and tried to choke hold him. When Doan finally said, Marita retreated, clutching the Dawnbreaker. Dagon saw this weakness and charged. Ha 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 ha, is this all you traitorous Dramoa and the divines can conjure? Pathetic. You will die after that then the gods themselves. He cried out, D. But before he could approach, 9 beams of light descended from the sky and hit him, causing him to scream in pain. Gritting his teeth, Dagon pushed through the blast. You will die, he yelled. Before a roar filled the sky and a huge golden dragon appeared hovering over the Daedra of destruction, a holy voice said, No Dramora, you shall. Dagon yelled, No damn you Akatosh. Just before the dragon cleared the Daedric of change once more with a wave of holy fire after flouncing down, the golden dragon changed into a human, complete with flowing brown hair and a beard, and golden plate armor engraved with dragons. Marita, see to your kin and gather the body. The ritual will commence. These Daedra will be casted into another world entirely. The scrolls have been gathered and Stendar has given his blood for the process. The dragon god was staring at the disorder that surrounded himself. Alongside Naruto. Naruto began, so this was the final battle, but you all just got killed. How could? But Nocturnal interrupted him with a kiss. She lamented, our physical bodies were destroyed, but not our spirits. Naruto nodded in nocturnal agreement and asked, so that Akatosh is the leader then? He smiled and said, well, that's one more ass to kick. The Nocturnal giggled and then waved her hand to wake him. Chunin exams arena. The following day Naruto asked Shikamaru and Choji, you guys ready? He took another drag from his cigarette and remarked, this is going to be a drag. He pumped his fist in the air and exclaimed, yep, I've been training non-stop. The only thing that differed was the clan armor he was wearing. Okay, let's kick some ass, Naruto said with a smile. Sarutobi pretended to smile at the Kazakage, who was actually Orochimaru, in the Hokage stance. Sarutobi nodded to the Kazakage and said, Lord Kazakage, it is an honor that you could join us for the exams this year. After Hayate was discovered dead this morning, the Genma took over and said, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the Chunin exams. The first match will between Shikamaru Nara and Tamari of the Sand. Everyone but the combatants exit to the stands so the match can begin, Genma stated. Dropping his smock to the floor, Shikamaru said, great, and moved across from Tamari. Genma asked, combatants ready? And both nodded. Begin. He exclaimed. He ducked and rolled behind her, then put his arm around her neck and tightened his grip. The moment he did, Tamaru reached behind her back, grabbed her fan, and brought it outward to strike Shikamaru. She shivered a little as he whispered in her ear, just surrender already. No, she exclaimed before kicking him and elbowing him in the ribs, knocking him back a little. Shikamaru exhaled deeply. He put his hands together before grinning and said, okay, I see how it is then. He muttered, darkness relies. Imprison. This caused several shadows to cling to her, subduing him. Before growling, she blushed at the Chan suffix that was added to her name. One more chance, Tamari-chan, surrender, he said, still grinning. She yelled, no, I'm not giving up. He sighed before he could think, grab a kuni. Her hands went to her pouch and she removed a kunai. Bring it up to your neck. With horrified eyes, she lifted the weapon to her neck. She pleaded, no, don't. There was no way this could be happening, and it couldn't end this way. Cut. No. You bastard. A dress. The garment fell from her upper body, leaving only a C-cup bra, and there was a rip sound. She shouted, damn it, Shikamaru. At him. After giggling, Shikamaru turned to see the small black mark adorning the side of her neck. He said, still got my little present, huh? Her eyes widened, and she attempted to hide it, but she was unable to move her arms. Shikamaru dropped the jutsu as she yelled angrily, fine, I surrender. She covered herself and left the area. Genma blinked and said, winner Shikamaru Nara. After giving a nod, Shikamaru returned to the stands where he was the center of attention. He said naively, what? It's not like I haven't seen her like that before. That's not the pound smart ass, cursed Karuni. Before she could respond, the next match was called, and he grinned and said, better than being a dumb ass. Genma yelled, Sakura Haruno versus Kabuto Yakushi. Sakura landed on all fours after leaping into the arena, but her opponent was nowhere to be found. Kabuto Yakushi! Exclaimed Genma once more. This time, 2 Anbu carrying a mutilated Kabuto emerged in a cloud of smoke. His nose, one ear, and his arm had all been severed. She turned to Genma, who shrugged his shoulders, and asked, "Is this really my opponent?" The old man narrowed his eyes and the Kazakage said, My Hokage-sama, I didn't know that the leaf openly gave ninja unfair advantages." Sarutobi berated his advanced age for failing to handle this matchup sooner, saying, "He was found to be a traitor and we done what was necessary to get information out of him. However, it appears there was a mix-up and now the situation is presented before us." Sarutobi got to his feet, drawing attention from the audience. Below, a group of Anbu led a pale boy in handcuffs next to Kabuto and removed the cuffs. Sarutobi declared, "This match looks unfair so in that case I shall bring in another combatant to assist him." Sai of the Root. He said without emotion, "I am condemned to die in the arena as a public spectacle. Fight them. Don't disturb the animal." Genma yelled, "Ready? Begin." And the Anbu vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving the three of them in its wake. Sakura growled and pulled out her hunting knives. Kabuto cast a beseeching glance at the emotionless Kazakage. Kabuto uttered the embarrassing words, "I can't perform hand signs." With a grunt, Sai unfolded a scroll and swiftly made several passes with an ink brush before exclaiming, "Super Beast imitating drawing technique." A number of tiger-like drawings jumped out of the paper at Sakura as a result. She rolled under as the first jumped at her, extending her knives and splintering it in two, soaking it with ink. While one was getting ready to do the same from the front, the second caught her off guard by latching onto her back. The beast snapped at her until she grabbed both sides of its head and snapped its neck again, causing ink to explode. She then ground her now pointed teeth and latched them onto the best neck, ripping forward and causing it to burst into ink. The other jumped forward, causing the Sakura to fall on her back. At the sight of an arrow pointed straight at Sai's heart, she bowed and jumped to her feet. "Kabuto," said Sai courteously. He looked at him and answered, "Huh." He remarked, "You might be useful after all." Sakura unleashed a chakra arrow while growling. After waiting motionless, Sai grabbed Kabuto by the hair and dragged him in front of him. Steel struck flesh, then again, and again. When Kabuto looked down at his bleeding chest with a blank expression on his face, he saw 4 pieces of wood protruding. One in his lunge, one in his lower abdomen, one dead center, and the last one through his heart. The arrows pushed agents to the ground and further impaled him after he uttered the faint words, "Oa Orochimaru S-sama," before tumbling forward with a thud and squashing sound. Without showing any emotion, he remarked, "Nice trick you have with those arrows." Sakura unclasped her breastplate and threw her bow down angrily. With a more beastly tone, she uttered, "You wait to see my next one." As bloodlust overtook her thoughts and her body transformed into a lichen's, she arched her back and let out a painful howl. Her metamorphosis caused many in the crowd to gasp. Ayla grinned at her pupil before feeling something encircle her hips. She turned to see Kakashi grinning. "Oh my Kami!" exclaimed Sakura's mother. It was shocking to see how shocked she was by what her daughter had turned into. As she started to run at him on all fours, Sai's eyes widened in horror. He started to draw another wave of tigers, but she was already on him. He ducked and rolled to avoid a swipe from her claws. He unsheathed his tanto and swiped at her hind leg, but it picked up and struck his face, sending him across the ground and into the wall. He stood up, only to have his head repeatedly slammed into the concert. She then grabbed his head and ran along the wall, leaving a bloody smear. With a groggy grunt, Sai got up from where she had been waiting. She aligned his hands with each other in the opposite direction and impaled them in his chest, causing the root to reveal one human sigh. Pain. She ripped him in two, sending both fleshy pieces flying across the arena as she slowly tore him apart and spit him down the middle. She then looked down at his origins, picked up his heart, ate it, and howled to the sky in celebration of her victory, returning to her human form. "Wa winner Sakura Haruno," Genma remarked, observing the bloody scene. Sakura put her armor back in place and went back to the stands, where her mother was among those who were not grinning for her. "How dare you, Sakura?" she shouted. "What are you discussing?" she inquired. "Don't act foolish. How could you have hurt me like this? You shamed me and turned into an abomination," she said. "You were shamed by me. And I've only gotten stronger. I improved, now furious," she said. "Instead of turning into a demon, you could have been better by marrying Sasuke Uchiha before she left," she said. "You are nothing. You are no longer my daughter." Sakura growled and pulled out her knife, but Ayla stopped her. "Sakura, don't worry about her. You won't even remember her in 100 years, but she will remember you and live to regret this day. Regret is a fate worse than death. I am your mother now," Ayla reassured the girl before giving her a hug. Next match, Choji Akamichi vs Neji Hyuga, Genma announced. Neji and Kuiji made their way down the stands. Neji told his friend, Choji, you should forfeit, I don't want to hurt a comrade. A.N. Neji is not an asshole in this FIC. Thanks but no thanks Neji, my clan's watching and I didn't endure that starvation in the forest for nothing, he groaned. Niju laughed and took his place, saying, very well then. Start, Genma shouted with the intention of finishing the fight quickly. Neji rushed forward, but he sidestepped and sent the Hyuga to the ground by bringing his now expanded hand across his back. Neji regained his footing and sidestepped an incoming Choji, spinning simultaneously and blocking each other's blows. Neji turned his body in front of him and started attacking his chakra points after saying, I am sorry but you are in my field of division. 4 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms, 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Neji yelled, hitting different parts of his body when the attack was finished. Choji let out a ground and collapsed onto his back, ending the fight. Genma declared, winner Neji Hyuga. Neji assisted Choji in getting to the medical staff before returning to the stands. Neji just nodded as Hihashi remarked, well done nephew. Naruto Uzumaki vs Sasuke Uchiha is the upcoming match. The crowd roared loudly for Sasuke when Genma yelled. The Uchiha were waiting in the arena when Naruto teleported there. Sasuke smiled and said, I'll give you one last chance loser, give me your power and I might spare you. Angry, Naruto said, Genma, hurry up and start this. Alright, start. Naruto grabbed him by the back of his collar and threw him straight into the air, summoning Volundrug and, at the perfect moment, slamming the weapon onto his duck-ass haircut, knocking him into the wall creating a spider web as Sasuke ran forward with a kunai and thrust her forward. Naruto sidestepped and delivered a bone-crunching knee to his stomach that raised him in the air until he brought his elbow down on his back, slamming him into the ground. Sasuke, however, had a knife concealed and at the perfect moment lodged in Naruto's neck, causing him to stagger back a little. He gripped his neck and gauged hard until the choke turned to laughter, and Naruto yanked him out of the concert after saying, your blood's not even worthy of being spilled on my weapons. Haha. I wonder what you were going to do after killing me, Naruto remarked cynically, while Sasuke scoffed and made hand gestures. Fire style. Jutsu fireball. Sasuke grinned, thinking he had finally won, but then a Daedric sword swung from the fire and toward him, severing his right arm from the rest of his body before he could react, sending him to his knees and screaming he yelled, sending a giant fireball at Naruto, who welcomed it with open arms. Sasuke looked and saw Naruto emerge from the smoke in his Daedric armor and red eyes, a sight straight out of hell. It was much too late for Sasuke to realize that he had created an enemy that was worse than Itachi. No, do not avoid me. Sasuke yelled as he crawled back into the wall, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. With pitiful eyes, Naruto gazed down at the boy in front of him. The Daedra yelled, finish him, out of his head. Taking hold of Sasuke's head, Naruto forced him to stand. He yelled, Sasuke, when you reach the other side, tell the gods who sent you the Daedric Lord of Konoha, before taking hold of his spine and driving his hand into his chest. Naruto said in a whisper, haha, I can feel your spine, funny, never thought you had one. He then pulled his arm back, tearing his entire skeleton from the flesh and turning it into a carpet. He crushed a pair of red eyes with his boot after glancing down at them. As he was about to throw up his lunch, Genma said, winner and Naruto Uzumaki. A few people in the crowd cheered, and then a well-known murderer with malicious intent swept the area. Sarutobi turned to face Orochimaru, who had thrown away his headpiece and was now staring at him angrily. Orochimaru yelled, damn you Uzumaki. You took my vassal, my power, you will die. Naruto responded by flipping him off, which only made matters worse with a growl. Orochimaru extended his neck and pointed his poisoned sword directly at his heart. A rough Anbu materialized and grappled Naruto from behind as he attempted to dodge it. Squish? No. As the blade pierced flesh and the red liquid spilled to the ground, the entire arena fell silent as Orochimaru yanked his head to the side and tore the sword from his body. His eyes widened slightly before turning into a maniacal grin. Naruto's face was splashed with blood, and he stood still as he watched the body that had been struck for him. His whole being went numb slowly. The person's head turned to reveal the Sandaime Hokage, who was grinning despite the blood dripping from his mouth. Thanks to Ayla, the Anbu who had grappled Naruto from behind was thrown flying into the wall and pinned by an arrow. Due to a physical malfunction, the elderly man fell backward and into Naruto's arms, who held his head and gently lowered him to the ground. Naruto trembled slightly and said, old man. My boy, he said feebly, you have made me so proud. He half yelled, why did you do that? You knew I would have survived it. Sarutibi wheezed, his veins turning a sickly black from the poison on the blade. My body just moved. I didn't have time to think. We can help you, I can. Before closing his eyes, the third Hokage said to Naruto, Shish, it's alright, I hope you can find the happiness you deserve and always remember a foolish old man who loved you. He clenched his hands and lowered his head, causing his hair to cast a shadow over his face as he frantically asked, Old man? Ji-ja, as the tears started to pour from his eyes. With the intention of killing Orochimaru, Jiraiya yelled, Sensei, but was stopped by a four-armed man who knocked him aside as his master vanished into the ground, laughing the entire time. Begin the invasion, Baki shouted, directing sand and sound troops to enter the city. The majority of them descended the arena into chaos in order to get through the exits. Civilians rushed over and crushed one another. The entire army entered the city without any opposition as explosions exploded throughout the village, destroying numerous buildings. With a paper bomb strapped to his back, Kakashi slit the jugular of a random sound nin and kicked him forward into two more enemies. A few seconds later, pieces of burnt flesh exploded onto the stands. Didn't we have a plan? Kakashi cried. Naruto was supposed to signal it, exclaimed Ayla as she ran her arm's length through a sand ninja with his heart protruding from the other side of his back. Sakura shouted, I'm on it, as she withdrew her hunting weapon from an enemy's skull. She kicked the body aside, started running right away, and jumped out of the stadium into the smoldering, blood-stained air. She landed on a sand ninja's back, causing him to fall onto his stomach. Sakura grabbed his chin and hair, then violently yanked his head back, ripping it off completely. She then kicked it and spun it in the air, sending the dead head into another enemy's chest, where it caved and fell over dead. With both of her knives out, she let herself smile before running into the confusion of the arena floor. With her weapons raised on either side, she dove headfirst at two enemy soldiers who were charging at her, slitting their throats before landing with a roll. Sakura drew her bow and hurled an arrow at another approaching foe. As she kept running, she drove her heels into his chest before jumping off his bleeding body, sending him to his knees. He saluted from a distance and landed next to Naruto, who was still holding the old man's head. Sakura screaming angrily at him, Naruto, Naruto, you have to signal the counterattack or Orochimaru will escape along with your vengeance. It wasn't until he lowered his grandfather's head to the floor and stood up with his arms slumped to the side, his hair still covering his face, that Naruto responded to her presence. Sakura opened her mouth to speak again, but was cut off when thunder roared through the sky. The clouds turned midnight black, the sky turned blood red, and a torrent of cold rain fell on the village that had been torn apart by the war. With his arms extended forward, Naruto's face was now uncovered, his oblivion symbol eyes flaming with rage. He shouted in a voice that was a mix of the 9 Daedric princes, Dremora, rise from the depths of oblivion, run this city red with blood and show no mercy. The ground started to tremble at 13 different locations around the village, including 4 at the north, south, east, and west entrances. This was because the gates of oblivion rose, releasing thousands of werewolf-made Daedra to Valkanaz, who was spearheading the assault, trapping the invading army inside. The current north gate of Konoha, the leader of the vanguard that captured the gates, Koga Umono of the Hidden Sound Village, smiled contentedly while he held a Konoha Chunin on his knees and his sword against his neck. He had a sharp goatee on his chin and loose, shoulder-length black hair at his sides. He was wearing unusual chakra armor that had a faint blue glow to it. In the Chunin's ear, Koga inquired, how does it feel, bastard, that everything you love will burn to ash by nightfall? The vanguard leader became irate when the man failed to respond. When he saw a horde of Dremora charging, he exclaimed, I said, what the hell is that? He formed his men into a defensive line and swiftly cut the man's throat. He shouted, hold, to his soldiers who were about to flee. 5 more soldiers follow suit after 3 break the line. Koga screamed, hold, damn it, as the Dremora force struck him, sending him flying from where he was. Even though Koga's face was covered in mud from the rain, he could still hear the cries of carnage all around him. A pair of metallic boots appeared before him. As he looked up more at the red demon's face that loomed over him. He said, what are you? Instead of responding, the Dremora lifted his axe into the air and let the blood fall from it, knowing what was about to happen. Koga Umono kept his gaze fixed on his murderer. His skull was split in half by the Daedra's battle axe, and pieces of his brain and skull fell into the mud. The Daedra declared, there can be no other end. He then gave the order for his soldiers to charge into the remainder of the city. Returning to the stadium, Naruto cocked his head in Sakura's direction and said, you should be running. After a brief pause, she nodded and started using her bow to attack the ninjas climbing the wall. When Goldbrand and the mace of Malaj Bowl materialized in both hands, Naruto lowered his arms and looked up at Orochimaru standing atop the cage building, a smirk on his face as 4 ninjas surrounded him. Naruto started out walking quickly before jogging and then sprinting when a Chunin attempted to stop him. He sidestepped and used the mace to smash the back of his skull. Then, using his momentum, he continued to spin, killing several more soldiers. Baki shouted, "Demon brat!" and lowered his sword over the Daedra. A voice interrupted Naruto as he was about to follow up after rolling out of the way. Walking in front of him, an Anbu with purple hair yelled, "No, he is mine." The woman's murderous intent flared with a nod. Naruto moved closer to his target. Baki noticed her weapon and remarked, "That sword, I've seen it before." In rage, Yugo tightened his hold on the sword. "My husband owned it, A.N. Okay, I'm not sure if they were married or anything, but I'm going with it anyway." "Oh, I see." Baki smirked and said, "If it's any comfort, he was good with that sword, but not good enough." Biki raised his sword to block a downward attack, then proceeded to smash the pommel into her mask, shattering it and revealing the stunning woman's face as Yugo yelled in rage and charged at the man with her sword in the upper stance position. Baki held his sword in the middle stance and channeled his wind chakra into it as she staggered back, clutching her broken nose, which snapped back into place with a quick yank. "A.N. I'm having her use water style, just an idea I got." Yugo snarled and directed her water chakra into it. As they stood with their backs to each other, the wind blew, and Baki squirted blood from his knees. Splitting them in two, they stared at each other for what felt like days before holding their swords at the side and running at each other. Panting heavily, Yugo turned to face her vanquished opponent before collapsing back into the dirt with a smile on her face and fading vision. Before a figure in dark robes reached down and removed her soul from her body, she thought, "I did it." With Naruto, the final grunt between Naruto and Orochimaru other than the sound 4 was "Ighhhhhhhh" as he roared and sliced off the head of another sound ninja. Orochimaru laughed, and Naruto snarled and released his demonic energy. "I'm terribly sorry about that, Naruto. But the senile old fool would have died anyway. Oh well, now it's your turn. You snake. I'm going to tear your damn soul out. What did you take over the man who has always kept me safe?" A pampered brat, Naruto said. "Orochimaru of the Sannin, you will not see the end of this day." He then started to move forward while spinning both of his weapons. Uzumaki. Naruto turned his head to the side and saw Gaara with his sand swirling around him and a psychotic smile on his face. He then returned his focus to the snake, who was laughing while a sand dome completely enveloped him and the sound 4. "Killing me is the only way to kill them. Describe my existence, Uzumaki." The Daedric king growled at the obstruction before letting go and letting his fury take control. Gaara shouted, his eyes turning yellow. "I will end your existence," Naruto screamed as he ran forward, and Gaara thrust his right arm outward, sending a sand pike at him. He flipped over it, bringing his leg down in an axe kick, but Gaara's sand blocked it. Naruto then kicked him again, causing the sand to hit him, sending him flying, and Gaara followed suit. Naruto regained his momentum, dived headfirst at the sand demon, and threw him back onto the roof, where he started beating him viciously, causing his sand armor to crack. He struck him with his right hand 3 times, then 4 with his left, before slamming his knee into his face. After 10 minutes of this pattern, he stood over him, holding the ebony blade above his head, with the tip pointing at his heart. "Now, pass away," he yelled and thrust her downward, but before his blade connected, a burning yellow gold sword pierced through Naruto's armored chest. He turned his head to see a woman's face that was covered by a loose robe. Hood behind her were 2 giant white angle wings. She grabbed the sword and plunged it back into his stomach before flapping her wings and taking off hundreds of feet into the sky, saying, "Bathe in holy light." As he grasped the hot blade, Naruto snarled, "Meridia." She laughed, then tore the sword away, causing him to fall free and hurtle to the ground below. The impact had not caused much damage, and he felt with his hand on the scaly, hard surface, but the wind still stung his skin as he continued to free fall until he reached an unexpected top. Dremora, Yolok Drem, the dark golden dragon Yvonne Volvalok, volume, as I call him, it's easier to write, felt that you needed some help. They were high in the air, almost above the rain clouds, where visibility was poor, and Naruto grunted and shakily stood up, saying, "Your timing is impeccable." He looked around for Merida, but she made herself known by shooting a beam of light at the dragon, who noised dived to avoid it. "Volume, bring me near her, and I'll take care of the rest." The dragon nodded its head and aggressively flapped its wings in the direction of the Daedric prince when Naruto yelled at it. Merida swung around just in time to see Naruto standing atop the beast's head, his dwarven pistol pointed at her. a Rasengan bullet in the cartridge, as she shot higher into the air with the dragon on her heels. Rasengan. Shot him dead. Marita screamed as her lower stomach twisted and pulled until her guts exploded out of her back, and Naruto jumped off Volume's head and tackled her in midair, sending them both crashing to the ground. Naruto yelled with a sadistic smirk on his face as he pulled the trigger, sending the mini-sphere of power out of the gun and into the angelic Daedra's gut. When Marita tried to stab Naruto with the Dawnbreaker, he grabbed her wrist, snapped it, yanked the blade from her broken hand, and plunged it into her chest. He then flipped her around, slammed his knee into her lower back, grabbed the base of her wings, and pulled with all his strength, ripping them both from her back and making her scream louder. Naruto wrapped her arm around her neck, pulled her close, and used the other hand to tear Dawnbreaker from her chest, slide it through her lower back, and hold her where she would meet the ground first. As he twisted the blade inside her body, Naruto started to sing, "You got nothing and nothing's got you. I can see your fear, it's around you. Built with strife and insight, but it's not enough. Ill defeat and discreet your every move. Instinctual, just take your life. I conquer by taking one step, one breath, and you're on my knife." Her body was implanted in the dirt with Dawnbreaker nailing her to the ground until Naruto slid it out and allowed it to absorb into him. He chanted out as her body struck the forest floor, creating a giant crater. Naruto concluded his gaze on the body by saying, "Until you know the meaning of Suffera. A.N. Devil May Cry 3. Suffer. Songs." I thought it would be awesome for him to say that, and I don't own it at all. A massive yellow beam of light shot from Meridia's body to the heavens next to Naruto, who stood and let the rain clank against his blood-stained armor. He raised his head high, letting the icy water run down his face, and then idly pointed his finger to the tree line. The Daedric Prince of Life was now dead. As Gaara leapt out of the forest in his demon form, he said idly, I had forgotten about you. Uzumaki, you will die. Your mother is going to drink your blood." As he thrust his tail out at Naruto, who caught the tip and drew the boy toward him before closing the distance with his arm. Gaara screamed out. Naruto then materialized behind the downed Gaara, grabbed the back of his head, and effortlessly lifted him into the air. He started to yell, "I will kill you, Uzuma," but stopped when Naruto shoved his hand into his chest, causing Gaara's body to slump and his yellow eyes to roll into the back of his head. Naruto then charged a fireball inside his chest and fired it, sending him off his arm and blowing a clear hole in his abdomen. When Naruto heard a wild laugh, he sighed and started to leave, but as he slowly turned his head, he saw Gaara standing upright, sand encircling him and pouring out of his stomach. "Haha, I'm finally free. Shikaku is free once more." As the sand accumulated hundreds of feet in the sky, revealing the one-tailed's form, Shikaku screamed out from Gaara's body. Naruto complained as he looked up at the sand demon, who was laughing uncontrollably. "Damn it to hella. Naruto," Dagon uttered in his head. "What?" The Daedric Prince of Destruction yelled, "Let me out." Naruto grinned before slamming both of his hands into the ground. Marun's Dagon. Rise and destroy from the dead lands. A few seconds after Naruto's cry, the ground shook and lava burst forth, and the Prince of Destruction slowly rose where he was standing, his weapons ready. "Ha ha ha ha, the Prince of Change walks the world one more." With all four of his arms outstretched, he shouted. "What the hell?" Dagon looked at the shorter demon in front of him after Shikaku screamed at the red one that was taller than him. "That's correct, runt. Fear and perish." With a shout, he struck Shikaku with his axe, cutting through his sand barrier and into his shoulder. Dagon then proceeded to impale his wrist blades and other arms into his stomach, causing his abdomen to gradually turn to glass. After sprinting along Dagon's enormous arm, Naruto jumped onto Shikaku's shoulder, scaled his sandy head, and reached Gaara, who looked down before he woke him up by slamming his boot into the side of his head. "Oh my god, I just got out." As Dagon simultaneously tore out all of his arms, breaking his body, the sand devil screamed. As he sank back into the earth, Dagon thought, it was nice while it lasted." Gaara was lying on his back on the forest floor below, staring up at Naruto, who had his hammer cocked back and his pistol pointed at him. With his finger on the trigger, Naruto uttered, "Nobody's here to save you now." "No." As Matsuari embraced Gaara's battered body, a girl's voice rang out. Please, stop hurting him," she called out to him. Naruto impatiently said, "Out of the way, girl." Kankuro, Temari, Choji, and Shikamaru emerged off to the side. "Leave my brother alone." Kankuro attempted to attack Naruto but was stopped by Choji. "Shikamaru, please take action." Temari begged her lovers, who were staring at Naruto. Shikamaru said, "Naruto, he's suffered enough, man." He was attempting to assist Temari's Naruto addressed the brown-headed girl beneath him, saying, "Give me one very damn good reason why I shouldn't kill him." She sobbed, "Because our child would grow up without a father." Gaara's eyes, like everyone else's, widened a little. After a few more moments of staring at the couple, Naruto lowered his gun. "I'll put him down if you don't fix the damn seal, child or no." His voice returned to normal. Then he tensed up a little and cocked his head in the direction of the tree line. "Get these people out, Shikamaru and Choji, right now." Before they could follow Naruto's orders, a 7-foot warrior emerged from the forest, his giant sword made of the same material in his right hand and his crystal-like body rasping against the ground. The Prince of Order raised his blade at Naruto and said, "You have disrupted the flow of order and must die, vessel of the fallen. God damn it, get the hell out of here." As Jigalag charged at them, Naruto yelled to the others, forcing him to engage in combat so the others could have a chance. Naruto roared as he struggled with the crystal sword that was weighing down on him, and Jigalag pulled it back, slicing into his armored hands. He gritted his teeth and called forth the Hersen spear, which he thrust at the Prince of Order, who sidestepped and spun on his heel, sending the hilt of his blade crashing into Naruto's back and sending him flying farther into the forest. He crashed through a number of trees and branches until he struck a dirty rock face, and Jigalag's sword flew out of the tree line and struck him. The Daedric Prince of Order emerged from the shadows and simply pointed at Naruto, causing 4 crystals to rise out of the ground, impaling him further into the stone and sending him out of reality. "Ah, bastard," Naruto grunted, his voice turning demonic once more. A look inside Naruto's head as Naruto's vision gradually returned to focus. He saw the dead lands, the red sky, and the stench of sulfur. He got up and was literally floating high above the flaming ground, and oddly, he was able to walk as though he were on solid ground. A few yards away, he spotted a figure. With the exception of the long, midnight black sword, Shadowrend, and the entire body composed of shadows, it was an exact replica of him. "Who are you?" Naruto questioned his twin. "I am the uncertainty that taints your heart, the entity that haunts your nightmares is me," he said in a high-pitched voice. "I am what will be your demise, Daedric King. Hollowed Ichigo, do not own." "At that point, I'll just have to murder you," Naruto screamed and tried to call forth one of his weapons, but nothing appeared. The dark clone laughed and then charged it with Shadowrend raised, saying, "Ha ha ha ha, your weapons can't help you now, Daedric King." Naruto jumped back to avoid a blow, but the clone slashed left and right. Naruto spun under a downward attack and uppercutted his look-alike into the air, punching his upper body. The entire time the clone smiled and unleashed a shockwave that knocked him off balance, then slashed his stomach, knocking him aside where he was waiting, and slashed him across the back. The Daedra growled and spun around, grabbing both of his doppelganger unknown currency Ger's wrists. "Yes. Let doubt and fear consume you, fear that you won't be able to protect the people you care about, as was the case when the snake gutted the elderly man or when poor Iyame was raped in front of her father. Nothing, and not even yourself, can be protected." Naruto became enraged and his strength faltered as the dark clone yelled with delight. "Damn you!" he sneered, then released his left arm and struck him in the face. He then used both hands to rip the dark sword out of the clone's grasp before choking Naruto by putting his arm around his neck from behind. "Naruto, you can't defeat me," he whispered in his ear. "Let that angrier fuel and drive you so we can both burn in oblivion, ha ha ha." Naruto closed his eyes and took an unexpected action, driving the sword into both the clone and himself. He said, "Ia accept Yua," letting go of all his worries and regrets. The doppelganger unknown currency Inger sighed as a white light engulfed them both. "Huh, so you figured me out, damn." After removing his sword from Naruto's bleeding body, Jigalag started to leave, but the area was leveled by an exploding shockwave that turned the earth and trees to ash. The Daedric Prince of Order charged at Naruto, intent on completing the fight, and Naruto stood waiting for him before vanishing, leaving an afterimage. Naruto was holding a Shadowrend, and red electricity was spreading across his body, a new strength guiding his being. He appeared just an inch ahead of Jigalag and slashed wildly but skillfully into his crystal body, screeching and stumbling back, but Naruto persevered, severing his left arm first, then his right, taking the Order sword in the process, and then slicing his stomach with scissors, causing him to fall to his knees. The Prince of Order gazed up at him impassively as Naruto stood in front of him, both blades ready. Shadowrend and the Blade of Order turned to mist and slowed into Naruto, strengthening him as a swirling beam of blue light shot from Jigalag's remains and into the sky. "Yua willa fela," he wheezed. Naruto snarled and sliced both swords across his neck, cleaving off his crystal head and shattering his upper body afterwards. As the rain kept coming down, Naruto let out a sigh and fell to the ground, his body sour and bloody. He grinned sadistically and looked up at the sky, saying, "I hope the rest of you bastards are watching because I'll be coming for the rest of you soon." The chamber of the gods, Aetherius with his godly eyes displaying anger and a hint of fear, Akatosh clutched the armrest of his thorn while he and the other divines watched the battle. "It would seem that the trickster has played his card," Stendar replied. "Yes, and what will belong to us?" Wanting to know a strategy, Arche inquired. Julianos told the others, "I do know this. We must act now before war comes to our doorstep once more." "You're correct, brother," the Dragon of Time spoke with authority as he rose from his seat. "Send word to the Izmir, Dragonborn. He is to lead a full assault with his army on this plan and kill the Daedra once and for all." They were starting to turn the gears of war.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.